There we go. Looks like it's live.
Okay.
All right. Hey, Cameron, you staying quarantined? You doing your proper
I
social?
Yes, I went to ship some things out at the post office, or the not post office, but the UPS store, and I maintained at least 6 feet between me and the next human being. So
Thank you for doing your part.
yes.
On many fronts. on top of even social distancing, I know that
Yeah.
we're doing some really great things right now amidst all the pandemonium. So yeah, so thanks for taking the time to chat. Just
Yeah.
before we jump into the red pill of education, I just want to say if anyone who's watching this from my page isn't aware of who Cameron is, okay, there's a really important principle. It's who do you listen to? And you should really listen to people who have what you want. So Cameron is a father of two, brilliant kids, has an awesome relationship with his wife, just very successful, has a lot of money, but also making a lot of impact on people's lives. So listen, right? Really consider what we talk about, because he's not just, it's not just some like gurus spitting theories around. It's like, we're really people that are actually creating a better world, even if the whole coronavirus and the whole reaction to it is happening right now. This is some practical solutions that we're sharing. So I just wanted to preface that so y'all really pay attention. It's not just another live stream. So Cam, the red pill of education. I mean, I see it very clearly what it is.
Yeah.
What's your take on it? Did you have the red pill? It looks like you did.
Yeah. It's like you hear this phrase like the red pill a lot, right? People kind of almost overuse it to a certain degree, but it really gets the point across of it's something that opens your eyes and you see things in a new way and you kind of can't go back. So it has so many implications. And I think right now that's what this whole coronavirus situation is really starting to do. I think it's working sort of right now at definitely a conscious level, but also kind of a subconscious level. Like maybe people aren't necessarily totally aware of what's going on, but they're starting to realize things and see things differently. For example, parents right now, like their kids are home, and at least I know here in Houston and a lot of places, the schools were on spring break last week. So what's today? Saturday. So they're just now finishing their spring break, and they should be going back to school, but all the schools are going to stay closed, and it looks like for the rest of the school year. And we'll see what happens after that. But I saw this thing that Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, said, where he said it's easy to close the schools, it's hard to reopen them. And I don't know what the context was he meant that within, but from the perspective of, it's like, if you can do something without having to leave your house, why would you? You know what I mean? Like if you could work from home, why wouldn't you want to? Doesn't mean you don't. And what's funny is, I don't know if you've observed this in Minneapolis. I don't know if you live in more of like, I think you live in more of an urban kind of area, but you've been in my place. It's more of like a neighborhood sort of situation. And people are out more like at the park, walking around, riding bikes and stuff. Like we went to the park the other day at like 2 o'clock on a Wednesday, and it was like Saturday afternoon. So it's not that people don't ever want to leave, but it's almost like now that they don't have to go do something that they really subconsciously don't want to do, then it's like relieved this kind of pressure in a way. I mean, I know there's still people are kind of scared and uncertain about, what's going to happen and money and all that stuff, but it's like, people are actually going out and they're more friendly, at least out here. People were very polite in the grocery store and so forth when I went out to get some stuff. So in other words, this whole thing is sort of shifting everybody very suddenly into another way of looking at things of like, hey, maybe we could have a society where most of our work is done when we want to, where we want to. And, maybe we need to consider what, the options are in terms of school and work, but also, we can go into like UBI and stuff like that, like because people are losing income right now if you're a server or any number of jobs, right? And people are starting to really wonder like, okay, so what are we going to do moving forward? And now you see like the whole thing that Andrew Yang was promoting with the UBI, or what do you call it, the freedom dividend, giving everybody money every month.
For anyone who doesn't know, universal basic income, where we get a check in the mail for being an American citizen.
right, you just get money every month, right? And it's like, I understand people say, oh, that's socialism, and there's all these things you can say about it. But when it's done universally, it's kind of hard to make that argument, and if you take what's going on right now with everybody being at home, and like think of all the people who are working, going to an office every day. And I'm sure this may have not applied to many people, like servers, like at a restaurant. Obviously, you can't do that from home. But like, let's say you were working at a job, and now they're making you do it at home through your computer, through like an app or something. All the workers are probably like, so we could have just been doing this at home the whole time, right? And then think about and let's assume for a moment it doesn't change the productivity, right? Then the company managers and stuff are going to be like, what the hell? Like, why are we have all this overhead? And who can't sexually harass people is people who don't go into an office. Okay, so it takes care of like a lot of problems just from that perspective, right? But then I was thinking about it in terms of education, right? So you have the kid at home, now they're on a computer, right? Or on their laptop or an iPad or their phone or whatever the case may be. And they're just interfacing through like Zoom, kind of like this with their teacher, and they have like the classroom, right? Well, I think one teacher can work with a lot more students now, right? And so why would the schools want to reopen? Why would they want to have all that that liability and responsibility? There's no behavior problems in the classroom when there's no classroom. So there's just like all these little tiny things that are kind of like adding up to people starting to rethink things, And I don't know. I'm not like surveying people and asking them, oh, so what do you see now? Right. And I already don't go to an office, and I already have sort of that non-traditional sort of work style and workflow and all that. So it's not like suddenly my life has shifted. My life hasn't changed much at all. I mean, really, it's just that the other people around me are like, oh, a little bit more, cautious and so forth. Right. But I really see now, and I was talking about this to you, I think I was talking to you about it earlier, about all these ads that like Katie and I are getting, my wife Katie, that we're getting on like our Facebook and social media for, like whatever learning app or curriculum, people making posts about Scholastic offering all of its, whatever curriculum for free online during this whole thing. And I was asking the question of like, well, what difference is it going to make? Right. And so I guess this is kind of like the red pill of the education part, at least from the perspective of school and so forth, is I think parents, whether it's now or very shortly or whenever, that being in the school or not being in the school isn't going to make any difference to the child's education. And that's not a good thing. I don't mean that like, hey, you don't need a classroom and you can still be educated. I mean, they're going to realize their children aren't being educated, because it's like they're going to see firsthand what's actually going on. You see what I mean? And it's not really fundamentally any different than what was going on when the parents were in school either. Of course, there'll be less distractions and so forth, but I think that I can predict that tutoring is going to go up, right? Probably online tutoring, but that's probably going to go increase because the parents are going to want someone kind of one-on-one to keep their child on track. But nothing's going to fundamentally change in terms of children's education, because the number one thing that the school doesn't give you, and neither does a tutor, by the way, the number one thing it doesn't give your child is the ability to process information at a higher and higher level. All that really ends up happening is they just give you seemingly more complex information to memorize. And so you kind of hold on to it as best you can, spit it back, go to the next level. But for most students, it eventually just becomes like too much. And you have those rare students, and those are the ones who get the scholarships and go on to MIT and all these things, who genuinely have a high level of information processing, relatively speaking, compared to everybody else. And so they end up, it seems like, hey, look, but the system does produce that. No, it doesn't. That's like, it's like literally those people just made it through without being damaged. And they already had a strong foundation to begin with for the most part, or they got support at home or something like that. So I think the biggest red pill within all of this is, right now, we're all realizing that society, one, has to shift, because, okay, after this, who the hell is going to want to really go out and go back into like mass gatherings, just like the way things were before? You know what I mean? Like, can you see how people are going to shift psychologically into, maybe we shouldn't go to a concert with 50,000 other people, or whatever the case may be. You see what I mean? Or maybe we shouldn't go to the mall, or maybe we shouldn't go to, like these big social gatherings and stuff, and really I was thinking it was going to take full on, like, in your face automation replacing jobs for people to start realizing that. But I think it's going to be this. I mean, I'm not like some prognosticator. I can't predict. I just kind of see what's going on. And this creates an urgent sense of fear and panic. When I say this, I mean the whole virus outbreak thing. Personally, when I looked at all the numbers and everything that's going on, like, I'm not saying it's not as bad as the flu or whatever, because you hear people saying that, but the numbers of people dying and so forth and being severely ill because of it, when you look at the actual numbers, doesn't really seem to add up to me of why we're having such a high level of panic. It looks more to me like the panic is being stoked for whatever reason, and so people are freaking out because, when you look at the numbers around like the flu, like I think I was saying the other day, like 20,000 to 50,000 people already this year have died from the flu in the US alone. And no one was like, hey, we need to keep our social distance. We need to, like, wash our hands like crazy and do all these things and not gather. And no one was doing that. It was like, okay, if I get the flu, I'm going to get really sick and be in bed for a week. And but you just accepted it. And now suddenly this thing that, when you look at the numbers, isn't really producing the same level. Of course, I don't know if that could change or whatever, but why is it all of a sudden everything has changed? And so I'm just seeing that there's like this shift in people's stability mentally and emotionally around this point, which is what's going to get them to open up more to the possibility of, let's just stay home unless it's otherwise necessary. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't mean to, like, go on and diatribe here, but
No, but I see it too in the landscape. It has shifted, and just in the past week, I've still had actually more people come to me with the work opportunities that we have with TechnoTutor and some other things I'm working on, and they see that, okay, I need to be able to sell something that actually has value. I know a lot of like high ticket closers in the sales world that it's like poof. I think it's a Warren Buffett quote. He says, when the tide goes out, you get to see who's swimming naked. And that's an analogy of, like, when the economy is good, everyone's in, it's all a party. But when the economy and fear comes in and economy drops, and only necessities are actually valuable, then you get to see who is just bluffing. And so
that's a really good point.
I have a lot of sales guys coming to me and saying, hey, I need something that is going to, one, give me good passive income, but two, is something that's actually a necessity, because not everyone needs, the most advanced marketing techniques or the, best health fitness coaching right now. It's like, what do we actually need? So that's been cool. And one thing as well, you were talking about in the school system, and it's taken me a while to understand this from you and from Avery and some others, about that ability to process information. You say, like, school doesn't guarantee that a kid is going to be able to process higher levels of information. And now that I'm honest with myself, I realized when I first met you 8 months ago or so, I wasn't processing what you were really saying. So it's kind of funny, but then, after working with you, a lot more closely and getting to really understand what it takes to increase my processing ability, so now I'm at the point where I have 20 different books right now from the library, and I'm actually reading all of them and processing it, and I'm applying it. But how would you explain that to someone of what is actually that information processing ability, and why is it important to be able to ramp it up?
Okay. I'll just give some analogies. The first thing that comes to my mind. So I'll compare what you get in school to what you should get, right? So imagine you went to a gym, okay? And like the gym where you work out and all that stuff. And someone took you around the gym and they showed you all the equipment and they told you about all the exercises, okay? And within that, you memorized everything they said. So in other words, and how do we know? Because at the end of it, they ask you some questions and you're like, yeah, the bicep curls, that's where you use your arms or whatever. And so like you can kind of repeat some of the information you were told. And it's not even necessarily 100% of what they told you. It's just a large percentage of what they asked you about. And they already told you up front, hey, by the way, the leg curls, I'm not even going to ask you about that on the test later. So you're like, okay, I'm not even listen to anything about that. Okay. So you remember a few of the things that they showed you, and you try to your best to remember those ones, and then they test you on it. Okay. And you get like an 80% or something. Okay, cool. Right. Now, next day, you actually have to go to the gym. Okay. And now you have to be there on your own for 6 months working out. And all you have is what you were supposed to have memorized that first day. That person is not prepared to like get the full they're not going to become a bodybuilder. Like think about the process like a bodybuilder goes through. They probably have someone they work with very closely, like who's already kind of been there to a certain degree. They have personal trainers, they're like researching, they're understanding stuff. Like it's a whole different level of focus and understanding and application that you're doing. You see what I mean? So what school does, and then think about this, what school does is 30 people show up to the gym that first day, and then they do the same thing with all 30 people all at the same time. And like 5% of them are really good at remembering shit. So it seems like they learned everything. And then the other, like there's like 30% who are like, you know, they kind of get some of it. And there's a lot of them who don't get any of it. And then at the end of the day, that 5%, they're like certified as personal trainers. You see what I mean? And it's like, but they can't even apply it necessarily. They've only just memorized what they were told. And what about everybody else? Right. And so what ends up happening is the reality of the situation is that it's the people who are really good at remembering and memorizing that it seems like the school system produced that. It didn't produce that. Those were just the ones who all, you know, they can look at a child's vocabulary at age 4 and predict what their performance will be in 3rd grade and even beyond.
Wow.
So then what does the school have to do with that? You see what I mean? It has nothing to do with it. And they even showed that with people who generally become effective readers in school, you know, throughout school, it didn't matter what approach was used to teach them reading in school. Whereas it seems like for the poor readers, the approach matters. In other words, it doesn't actually matter. You see what I mean? It's really just putting you through a process that looks like something's going on. At the end of it, the people who were prepared from the beginning, who had an advantage already, seem like they're getting the benefit of it, but really they're just coming out kind of no different than they were before in terms of ability, right? So no one goes through school, generally speaking, and develops a superior ability to process information. So what I mean by process information, it's like the ability to take in information, understand it, first of all, understand how it fits into the context of all the other information you know, utilize it to make decisions in reality that produce tangible results that better your life or other people's lives or whatever the case may be. That's what information processing is. It's not just I can remember what's on the test and tell you the answer. A perfect example of this is like if you were to take a course in computer programming, right? Now in math, like in high school, like algebra or geometry, you can get by kind of like just memorizing what they tell you. But if you were to do that same approach in a computer programming class, and then now you have to write computer programs, if you didn't actually understand it and able to apply it, it's not going to work. That same approach. Prepare for that. You know, only the smartest people generally become the computer programmers because it was based on their information processing ability already. It wasn't something school prepared for. You see what I mean? And so it's a difficult pill for people to swallow, to realize like, oh, our school system was never designed to do that. It was never designed to do that because the history of our world is a small elite group of people who know a lot of stuff about the way the world works, and their children growing up in the environment with them where they're constantly talking about and dealing with those things and basically mentoring their children and only allowing them to associate with other people in that same circle. And then everybody else who's basically just herded into whatever that small group wants them to do, and then goes along with it because they don't know what's going on. They can't really see outside of their own little bubble and so forth. right? So the school system is not something that's designed to take everyone to the highest level. So sometimes when I talk to people who are very passionate about making a difference or education or whatever, they're like, we need to fix the school system. It's like, no, it's doing what it's designed to do, right? You know, but think about this, man. Like, do you think Jeff Bezos cares if like your kids are educated or my kids are educated? I mean, he doesn't care. They're just gonna automate everything. Like he's good. He doesn't have to worry about it. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, back in the long time ago, in medieval times, you had peasants, right? And now you have the lower and middle class. It's the same thing. The school system just makes sure that the average person is able to operate in a society of what we have today, rather than back in the Middle Ages where they just needed you like in the fields or whatever. Right. So it's not
Mm-hmm.
designed to teach your child to increase their ability to process information, because there's a market difference in, say, like Bill Gates or Warren Buffett's ability to process information versus the average person. The average person, if you took the average person and then you replaced Warren Buffett's with that person, Warren Buffett, I said Warren Buffett's, Warren Buffett. Okay, you took Warren Buffett, you replaced him with this average person. Now imagine in a day how many people he's responsible for. That person that you replaced him with would melt down.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the amount of responsibility the average person can take care of themselves, maybe their kids, their spouse, and maybe a few of their close relatives who need their help and stuff like that on a regular basis. And pretty much they have some task that they do at work. And that's pretty much it. They don't have the ability to process like a system of information where the reach of that system is like thousands of people or hundreds of thousands or millions of people, because you have to look at all this more, just a total different amount of information, and
Mm-hmm.
process that and see how it in real time is affecting things. I mean, look, think about what the world leaders right now are facing. Like, can you imagine being in that situation and now your country is like dealing with this crisis? And regardless of what you think about the virus itself, whether it's a big deal or not a big deal, it's definitely having an impact. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
economically, et cetera, it's making a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And being in that situation and getting up every morning and being like, okay, the media is now going to come after me. All these people are coming after me, and I have to make decisions that's going to affect millions of people or hundreds of millions of people. And I have to talk to the head of this, you know, the disease, you know, center of our country. I have to talk to the corporations and the supply chains for medical stuff, you know, the pharmaceuticals, like all these different industries. And I mean, think about it. Oh, I posted on my Facebook. You can check it out later. There was a tweet that someone posted from the CEO of, he said the CEO or the president. I think he was the CEO of Marriott,
Mm-hmm.
right? And him giving like a personal statement to, I guess the board of directors, or like, you know, I don't know, maybe it was the whole company, whoever he was addressing. And he was giving like a personal statement of how this whole thing is impacting Marriott worldwide. And he
Mm-hmm.
said it's like 75% of their normal business is gone right now. And he's like, there's hotels that are not going to be opening back up. And he at one point he even almost started crying when he started talking about how it was impacting like they call them like associates or whatever, you know, like the people who work at Marriott, how it was impacting their lives, you know. And so when he started talking about it, you could see him like choking up, right? And when you think about someone in that position, what he's now having to deal with, like the average person could not handle it. You know, the amount
Yeah.
of information you have to be able to handle and process and so forth. So information processing, it seemed like it didn't matter before, because in the past you could just go get a job and be basically told what to do, or you kind of can figure it out. But it's such a small level of responsibility, what you're responsible for, that you don't really have to know a lot about a lot. That's specialization, you know. And if you have a little bit higher level of, you know, ability to process, you probably like upper level management, or and then you're dealing with a group of people, or like you're a project manager, or maybe you're a director, or you're an executive. You see what I mean? So like the higher your ability to deal with information, the higher your position in society.
Yeah.
But we're now entering a phase where the system doesn't have a solution for everybody. Like they're like, it's not like a corporation is like, hey, here's some jobs, anybody need a job, okay, come do this and we'll just make sure you get a paycheck every week or every 2 weeks or whatever they go, right? Now it's like, oh, there's no more jobs, sorry, figure it out. That's what like all these governments scrambling, going, we need to freeze mortgages, rent payments, utilities. We need to give people a check every week, like because they know that people are not going to be like, okay, it's a crisis, not a big deal. This is an opportunity for me to grow. Let me take more responsibility. How can I give? You know, and then also make sure I'm taken care of, and other, you know what I mean? Like people can't process what's going on.
Yeah,
This is what we've been saying for years now, is that at a certain point, it's going to come to you where you're going to have a higher level of processing ability. Like we say in our TechnoTutor presentations, like what kind of jobs are there going to be? And how do you prepare a child for jobs you don't even know what they're going to be? They don't even exist yet. The only way you can prepare them is to increase their ability to process and deal with information and connect the dots and see the patterns and be honest about the information. React emotionally to stuff, and you put your own little bias on it, and you like kind of flavor it or color it with your own little idea or something, then the result in reality, when you try to apply it, isn't the result that you actually want or that anyone wants or that you expect. It's not going to be that, right? So you're not going to get a predictable result. Therefore, you're not going to be able to predict what your income would be or whatever it is, right? So we're now in a situation where it's of paramount importance that people raise their ability to process information. And I think you've seen for yourself how quickly using TechnoTutor, you can kind of, you can see a tangible difference, not just like, oh, okay, yeah, this, you know, this helps me, you know, read one more book or something. Like, no, it's like, whoa, I actually see things I didn't see before that were right there, but I just wasn't processing it. And it's not because you're an unintelligent person. You were already intelligent. It's because you can't see what you're not programmed to see. That's the issue. The school system is not designed to do that. It's not going to take care of people's kids. And then even if you homeschool, guess what? Not going to change anything, because what people do when they homeschool, they just do school at home. It's not changing anything, right? And I've been a tutor for the past, since like 2005, right? In the homes of the wealthiest families in Houston and so forth. And so I know what they're doing at the private schools. I know what people are doing homeschooling and so forth. And I can see that children today, and it's not just only children today, but you know, that's what I worked with directly. They cannot read. They can't process information. They can't think beyond what they're told. They have to just basically take what they're given, memorize it, and repeat it back. That is not a skill set that's going to help anybody now. And I think it's becoming very obvious. I don't know if it's obvious to other people. It's obvious to me, right? And it's funny, I saw Andrew Yang tweeting something. He said, you know, because he's running on the platform as president, although he's dismissed his campaign, he was running on giving everybody money, like you mentioned earlier, UBI. And he tweeted recently, because his whole thing was about talking about automation is going to, you know, replace jobs. No, people are going to be, you know, have the ability to have work. So we need to take care of people and so forth, give them money every month. And he tweeted recently, when this whole thing started going down with the pandemic, he was like, man, maybe I should have been talking about pandemics instead of automation. Because now it's so obvious, like literally everybody just got pulled out of the workforce, basically, you know? And so now everyone's sitting at home going, oh shit, like, what am I gonna do? You know, I'm not worried, but I know how people feel. Like I can place myself in their shoes and be like, oh fuck, I got my kids at home, I don't have any income, and my kids, I don't remember how to do algebra. And this is what, it kind of actually hurts a little bit to think about it, of like a parent right now, the average parent in this situation where they don't have any income and they're stressing about their child trying to complete some online homework assignment. It's a waste of fucking time. Like it's not, it's like, how can we keep ourselves occupied with stuff that doesn't matter? You know, and I know it's controversial. I know there's gonna be people who are like, think that I'm suggesting we just don't educate people, which is the last thing I'm suggesting, right? Obviously, I'm suggesting that we really actually educate people. But the parents don't remember how to do the algebra homework, but they went through the same system that they're putting their kids through. And then they're trying to stress about how to teach their kids algebra. And I saw somebody saying, now we should really consider now paying you know, we should give teachers $1 million a year. They've been dealing with our kids this whole time. They haven't been educating them. They've just been like babysitting them, when the parents are reacting to is having to be home with their kids all day because they don't actually like their kids probably. You know what I mean? Like they actually are like, shit, man, my kid's kind of annoying. You know what's funny? That's not happening to me, right? My kids are here just like they're always here, and I love being around them. And so to me, and they're not any more or less cooperative than they were before. right? Actually more cooperative because every day they grow a little bit in their vocabulary and so forth. But I'm saying it's not like suddenly I'm seeing a side of my kids I never saw before, which parents are like having to deal with. You know what I'm saying? You know, they can deal with it for like a week or over the summer vacation, but they make arrangements for that. But the parents are at work all day and they make arrangements or whatever they do during the summer. Right. But now they're like, oh shit, I have to take responsibility. And what I know is that we can show parents a way where you don't need to worry about the unnecessary stuff. Okay. It's not that I'm saying your child should not learn algebra, but it really shouldn't take them a year or 2 years. Algebra is something you can learn actually very quickly when you have the ability to process it. That's just a fact, right? I think someone did the math, and you can learn all of like math up through calculus in a matter of months if you have the ability to process it. So what should be focused on is how do you increase the processing ability of the person, not, okay, everything in this book by this amount of time, and that's the only thing I'm going to use to measure whether, you know, you're educated or not. I'd rather focus on teaching the child how to process information so that I know for a fact whatever book I give them, they're going to be able to understand it. Because reading a book and let's say studying calculus is something you should do on your own time. It's something you should do for yourself. Like I have math books, I guess they're probably up there on the top, but like you have to go through it, and there's like on one page a question that it's like a problem that might take you a week to solve. Because you really gotta, it's like philosophy. You gotta like sit there and really think about it and rack your brain and think of how it connects and work on these problems. You know, they can put a problem in a math book and say, here's the answer, here's how you solve it, and so forth, and here's the result. And literally that problem took a fucking math genius a year to figure out the answer to. And now they're telling the child, just memorize the answer and move on. Understand anything close to what that person understood to figure out what seems like a simple result, you know? So we're totally, but let's be honest, when the Industrial Revolution came along, the industrialists needed not only factory workers, because people sometimes say like, oh, our school system was designed for factory workers. That's true, but you know, think about this. Do you only have factory workers in a factory? You don't. You have to have managers. You have to have the secretary. You have to have the people doing the supply chain, logistics, all that stuff. So it's not just for the factory workers, it's for everybody in between. And it creates a society of, you know, different kind of classes of workers. At the end of the day, they're all workers. But you see what I'm saying? There's the people who are managing the workers, and there's people managing the managers and so forth. And the school system kind of creates that division. Do you know how it does it? By wasting children's time, by wasting 12 years of their life. When they could have been, you know, like my son, he's 3.5 and he's teaching himself piano downstairs.
And like, and like not just, oh, cute, he knows how to play some notes. Like he actually understands it.
No, yeah, he's got a chord chart on the thing that's like, you know, and he's sitting there, A diminished 7. Okay. And he's like teaching himself chord theory because he can read what's on there. And I just look at it for myself. When I was a kid, I would get books and I would be so fascinated by like the information. Like when I was in middle school, I really got obsessed with Einstein and like relativity theory. And I got this book on relativity theory, and I would like write down the equations, and I didn't understand 99% of what I was doing, but it was my curiosity. It was like something about it was fascinating to me. And I just imagine if I had TechnoTutor back then and I could put that vocabulary in and actually understand it, and then go back and be like, well, okay, you need to study like some other kind of basic math before you just start trying to understand this. Like it's based on other stuff. Okay, let me find that. I'm interested, you know? And so imagine as a parent, you know, being able to give your child the mental resources so that then they can go and their curiosity can kind of lead them, and they can start figuring out like, oh man, there's this problem right now. Everybody needs these respirators. I bet I could 3D print them. And I could figure out a more effective way to do it because I'm studying all the blueprints and I've looked at all this and I put it all together and I created a more effective one and I'm shipping them out, you know, like, and it's like a 12-year-old doing that. That's possible. Somebody could be doing that right now. But what most people want to do is they just want to entertain themselves. That's what most kids are doing. They're wasting their time entertaining themselves because no one's giving them any real direction. Because, you know, 99 times out of 100, there's in a classroom where they're looking at the teacher and at least unconsciously or subconsciously thinking like, that's not someone I want to be like. You know, like I don't look up to that person. That person just yells at me. They're not interesting to me. They don't seem to care about me really. You know, and everyone always says, oh, you know, but there's actually a lot of really great teachers out there. So I'm not talking about all teachers. Yeah, okay, not all teachers, but most. Most teachers suck. It's just the truth, right? And I mean, most tutors suck. You know, and even myself, having been a tutor for many years, the best I could do was just kind of like be a friend to that kid and motivate them to get their homework done and stuff. I couldn't make them smarter, you know? So the teacher is a product, like, you know, it's funny. We hold teachers in this really high esteem. It's like, we talk about how great they are, you know, or they're doing this like service, but what's the result? Like, show me the actual result where they're consistently producing a better generation than before. Now, is that the teacher's fault? No, because they're literally going through the exact same education system. So how is the system itself supposed to produce a better, is it like some kind of just naturally self-evolving system? No, I don't think it is. It's man-made, it's artificial. It's doing exactly what it's designed to do, right? So going back to what's the red pill, it's realizing two things really. One, this education system is not designed with anyone's best interest at heart. Okay, not even the industrialist or the elite or whatever you want to call them. Because, and how do I know that? Because look what's going on right now. Okay, even they're getting kind of screwed to a certain degree, depending on what industry they're in. I mean, if you're like an oil tycoon, I'm sure you're probably doing okay. All right, but you know, what are they going to do when everyone starts coming after them because they can't even afford the price of oil or whatever, right? So number one, the education system does not have anyone's best interest at heart. It's not designed to optimize a child's abilities or anything or bring out their full potential, which is the truth. But also too, education is way more simple than anyone realizes it is, or I would say that most people realize. Just giving your child the effective vocabulary, but doing it in the right way, which if you're not using TechnoTutor, you're doing it wrong. I'll just be blunt. There is a right way to do it. There's a wrong way to do it. Well, okay. You could also be born in a family like Bill Gates or something like that. Of course, even with TechnoTutor, you can go beyond that. But I'm just saying, unless you were born into a family where you're in that 0.001%, where you got an effective vocabulary and education and environment and everything, which is the vast majority of everybody on the planet. So that's obviously not a solution, right? I'm talking about a systematized way to increase your ability to handle information, deal with information, find information, understand context, communicate, express, all things that actually makes us unique as human beings, that makes us valuable, that right now we're not utilizing at all. Because the reality is, whether it's you, another child, another person, we're all human beings. And we're all equally capable of amazing things. And I'm not just saying some platitude. Like a child born in poverty, that child is capable of way more than anyone realizes, just by giving them an effective vocabulary. Because if you take a laptop and you go put it in a poor neighborhood, or you take a laptop and put it in a rich neighborhood, it's the same laptop. Fundamentally, there's not a lot of difference. Yes, one might be a little bit older than the other one, but you can upgrade it. You see what I mean? It's the same basic fundamental architecture that you're dealing with. And so we're not in any way honoring what's the real capability of human beings. We're just putting them through a system to continue to produce people who are dependent on either the government or corporations to give them a job. But dude, I mean, look around what's going on right now. Look how fragile that system is. Right? It can't handle the emotional instability, and that's the problem. That's also a key component of real education, is emotional stability and maturity. Understanding something like give as you want to receive, that principle, is more than just memorizing those words. There's an application that goes along with it. And unfortunately, most people hear that and then they think that means, oh, go out and give money to the homeless guy. That doesn't solve a problem. See, so you see how even that principle can be tainted and kind of tweaked incorrectly, so it doesn't really produce a better world. Because if you want to really give as you want to receive, all you have to do is be okay with there being a system that does that for you. Doesn't even require any effort, like less effort than you would think you'd have to apply. Imagine children, instead of in the first 12 years of their life, focusing on a bunch of BS that obviously no one remembers or cares about, and everyone's constantly asking, why am I learning this? What if instead they learned how to actually function in groups and cooperate and build things and design things? And so by the time they're 16 or 15 or 16, for like a few years, they're doing all the labor required to produce all of the different things that we need in society. So maybe for like 3 or 4 years of your life, you're doing what you would call labor. And I don't mean like you're freaking doing a plow or something. I mean, you're working on whatever the systems are, you're contributing to that. And then after that, through that, you're educating yourself and developing like a passion for something, and you can really go and start contributing. Like imagine every child being Bill Gates, or Steve Jobs or Elon Musk or whatever, minus all the negative stuff that we all associate with some of those people, but having like that ability to process information. But the school system doesn't even think that that is, number one, possible, or number two, even a priority.
Yeah.
So our whole perspective with TechnoTutor is and not just saying it, it's like a complete 180 to everything else, because the principles, the philosophy is totally different. We're saying, no, we know for a fact everybody can be at that level. That doesn't mean everyone's going to want to do the same things, but everyone can be operating at a much, 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 much higher level. I don't know if this is true. This is just something I've read, and there can be ways in which you bias information and so forth. But I read some research that said in Athens, right, in ancient Greece, it was the only example of a direct democracy, as far as I'm aware of. Okay, that's ever existed in history. A direct democracy, meaning every citizen voted on everything, right? I imagine we could have a society like that, where literally you have apps, and any major decision that need to be made that would affect everybody, you would vote. Or if the decision was going to affect you, you would vote on it. You know what I mean? Maybe you wouldn't vote on every decision, just the ones that somehow affects you or that would need your input. Okay, and you could vote on it. Now, what is that going to obviously require? Because would you trust the average person to make decisions like that?
Exactly. Yeah. It requires you to be able to trust someone's ability to think
Yeah.
and reason effectively, and not just be
Yeah. Like they really understand it, and they're not like, well, I feel like this is what should happen instead of you know what I mean? Like everyone's like, no, this makes perfect sense. I agree. Let's do it. Like in other words, you're not just asking for their consent. You're asking them, does this actually make sense? And everyone's like, yep, I don't see any problems with it. It makes sense. Perfect sense. Yep, I agree. You see the difference, right? Mm-hmm. Versus, how do you feel about this? Well, I don't like it. Like that's not a way to make decisions. And that's why the politicians, that's why we don't, as Americans, let's just say, talk about America, we don't actually make any decisions in government. Everyone's too stupid. Like they couldn't. Now, I'm not saying that the politicians should be trusted to make the decisions, because you see what happens when they do it. So I'm not saying it's the best system. Right? But I mean, so that's telling you something. But the point is, if everybody had the ability to process and understand, the context of whatever is being talked about and how it connects to everything else, like, can you see you'd have to have the type of ability to process like a Bill Gates? You'd have to be like, well, I see how this affects supply chains here, and this thing over there, and all these different dots. So, like in ancient Athens, right? Apparently, they had a direct democracy, or I mean, obviously, they didn't have an app, but everyone would vote on things. But also, apparently, the average IQ in ancient Athens was 120, which is like on the IQ scale is like everyone was at least gifted intelligence, right? But the average IQ is 100 right now, comparatively, right? Which that's over a standard deviation. And when you're like a standard deviation above or below somebody, it's very difficult to relate to them because of your ability to process information. It's hard to relate to what it's like to not be able to understand something that just is obvious to you, right? And so the higher you go up, it becomes even more difficult to relate, right? So how are we going to get a society like that ever if people don't have a higher information processing ability? Are we just doomed to just everything being emotional all the time? Like whatever, if we can just convince enough people to dislike something, then we can get the answer we want. I mean, that just means that as a society, we're just totally having to just accept that we're just going to be manipulated by politicians and stuff forever. So how can we complain about the politicians when they're just dealing with what's in front of them? They're just the smartest people. I mean, within reason, they're you can talk shit all you want about people in politics and so forth, right? But they're better communicators. they can handle more responsibility, they can handle more pressure, you know what I mean? And I know a lot of them have a lot of weird problems and stuff too, right? But they're just the products of our society. So how can we sit there and blame them? What we have to do is raise everybody's ability to process information so that we can all equally understand what's going on and either give consent or, you know, remove consent to certain things, you know. And now I'm really grateful for everything that's going on. Of course, I don't like to see that people are suffering or dying or anything. That's never a good thing. But I'm grateful for what's going on right now, because I think people are starting to wake up a little bit, or at least it's an opportunity for them to. Honestly, you know what's really cool about this? This is way better than everyone realizing this because of automation.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we had to wait till everything was at that level before, we're all fucked. This is more like a temporary thing, like, because it's going to get under control. People are going to go back to work. But I think it's like that rubber band. You stretch it far enough, it doesn't go back. And I think that people's psyche is going to be a little bit stretched by this, of like, it feels like we could change things, like, and we do need to change things. And we just kind of are getting, you know, when everything kind of returns a little bit to normal, I think some things won't return to normal. Like, I don't know, the hotel industry, the Las Vegas, stuff like that. I don't know. I think there's certain things where it's like they can't hold out long enough. I don't know. We're going to find out. But I see that people are stretching their understanding a little bit, so that they're going to be more open to, yeah, maybe we should change the way our children are educated. And you know what? It's going to be an individual decision. That's why the way we're set up as TechnoTutor is all based on talking to people individually, one-on-one, because I think parents are much more reasonable than other people might consider. And I don't just mean parents. I mean, people are more reasonable than people will consider if you talk to them one-on-one. When you get people into a group, it starts to become like a whole nother dynamic. See what I mean? So if you got in front of a group of parents, one person can, like, their emotions can kind of influence the whole thing. But if you talk to people individually, you can show them like, hey, this is how you can take responsibility for your child's education, so that the next time something like this happens, whether it's a virus outbreak or automation or whatever, the next time this happens, they'll be prepared. You know, and especially from the perspective of adults now, you can prepare yourself by building an income for yourself that not only do you feel really good about it, but it takes care of you when you're not working for a period of time. And that's what people are missing too. The education system doesn't teach you how to do that. So it keeps you constantly dependent upon those who know how to do it, because guess what? You're their source. Well, not you, of course, but you know, the average person is their source of constant income. But now no one's going to work. So even those people are like, oh shit. Why else would they be like, okay, we'll give people money? They have to be like, no, their backs against the wall right now to even be considering that they would give just the people money. Because you know why I say that? Because once you give it, you can't take it away. So this is like a fundamental, if they start giving that UBI, it's going to be very difficult to take it away. So I think the fact that they're even considering it or even talking about it means they know there's a problem here, you know? So I don't know. What are your thoughts, man? Like, I know I'm kind of getting it all, but yeah.
I love hearing your take on all this stuff, because I think you see it with a lot of common sense. And one thing, so you use the word vocabulary, and I know we use that word, and we really, you know, understand that vocabulary is like the amount of words you know and can use and understand how they fit together. It's like, I like the analogy of, imagine a tool belt, and imagine you only had a few words. So you only have like a hammer, a saw, maybe a screwdriver, right? But now everything's collapsing. Well, you need more tools. You need a tape measure, you need a level, you need a, you know, walkie-talkie, you need as many tools as you can have to be more effective, because you don't know what you're going to come up against. That's how I see vocabulary. Because I had a presentation with a gentleman last weekend, and he said, well, if vocabulary is the answer, why aren't all English students just running the world? I'm like, I see where the disconnect is. I'm like, no, because in business, there's a vocabulary of business, there's vocabulary of automation, a vocabulary of marketing, so on and so forth. And he goes, oh, like then I literally saw it click in his like demeanor. So anything about that you want to touch on? And I'm trying to find the Wi-Fi here. Kind of weird, but yeah.
No, it's fine. I know how you're what you're going through with that point, because it took me a while to find the right words to explain it to other people, because like I said, something can seem obvious else, and part of that, though, it's fascinating because it really, having an effective vocabulary really literally is the key to being effective in this world. And this has been known for a long time. I mean, part of the problem is, like, we might have some like research from like 1920s that proves it, but it's not like people didn't know this before. Like, it was just that some research was done at that period in time that from a research scientific standpoint showed some evidence of something. But it's not like some kind of actual secret knowledge that having an effective like, if vocabulary really wasn't that big of a deal, why would we even talk? What is it that makes us different than animals? Why is it that we're able to build skyscrapers and cities? Is it just because of our thumbs? I don't think so. It's like we have the ability to come up with an idea and then communicate it to other people and then show them where they can fit in with making that thing a reality. And then give them incentives to do it and explain why those incentives are about. Like, in other words, we can sell them on stuff and we can communicate, we can express, and we can admonish, and we can all kinds of different ways of expressing ourselves. And how is it that someone like Jesus or Buddha or Muhammad or Lao Tzu or Confucius or anybody is able to have an effect right now, thousands of years later or hundreds of years later, whatever the case may be? How is it? Yeah. It's simply because somebody or they wrote down what they were thinking about. Whether they wrote it or somebody else, it doesn't matter. The point is, it was written in words. And so the words become like a software that literally operates these bodies. Software that was written 2,000 years ago. But there's a bug in it, because like Jesus said, give as you want to receive, but we don't have that. Even though everybody knows it, everyone's heard it, right? People go to church, billions of people go to church, and that is founded upon that person's words, but then the things he said are not implemented. But that's, again, emotional bias, other things come in. And so why am I bringing that up? Because when you brought up the vocabulary point, yes, there's a vocabulary of business. There's a vocabulary of whatever the thing is. If you're a chef, you have a certain vocabulary. Just go talk to somebody who's like an expert in their field and just let them talk to you as if you were an equal to them in that. Within a few minutes, you're lost because they're using all this technical stuff. You have to stop, like, okay, but when you say a souffle, like, what exactly is a souffle? Like, how is that different than just like a cupcake? You know what I mean? Like, whatever it is, right? And then oh, well, okay, this, and they start getting all technical, and they within each thing, there's a lot. You could just like open it up, and there's like all this extra stuff in there that you didn't even know was there. You just heard that one thing, you had an image in your mind, and you're like, okay, that's what that is. When they start explaining, you're like, whoa, that word has a lot more inside of it than I realized. So there's a lot more detail. But vocabulary goes even beyond that. It's the sum total of everything you know all together. So it's not just your business vocabulary. It's also your vocabulary of how you feel about yourself. What are your desires? What is your fears? Because that affects how you talk to your wife and your kids. It also affects why you're in this business and what you're trying to get out of it, and why you might put shareholder profits over the well-being of your employees, or whatever the case may be, because you're driven by desire for power, or maybe you're just driven by you didn't get enough attention from your parents and you use it as a way to manipulate others, and you don't even actually care about the money. I'm just giving an example, right? Like, everything that's inside of you is all the words that are not necessarily verbalized all the time, but it's like that software running everything about you. It's your sum total of your whole personality and everything. That's your vocabulary. So I kind of have got to this point of just condensing to, of course, this doesn't make sense to the average person initially, if I were just to say this, but I say, like, your vocabulary is everything that you can do, right? That's actually your vocabulary. Now, people say that's not what vocabulary means. Well, but it is what it is, right? Like, what is mathematics? If I ask the person, what's mathematics? I mean, what do you think not what do you think it is, but what do you think the average person would say, just from what you think, if I said, what do you think is mathematics?
Yeah, it's numbers and how they relate to each other. Oh,
Right, say it again. It was cutting out a little bit.
yeah, it's number, how they relate to each other.
Right. Okay. Exactly. I mean, that's probably what I would assume people would think. Like, oh, like, algebra and geometry and stuff. Right. But mathematics is a way of thinking. It's being logical and understanding the relationships between parts of a system. It's like when I studied mathematics in university, as a mathematics major, I had courses where there was like very little use of numbers per se. Like, it's not that we wouldn't use them from time to time, but we weren't like doing calculations and stuff. It was literally like a philosophy class. We would have words like a limit, and they would have a definition, which was a bunch of other words, and then we would take some and we would be a problem, and we'd have to prove why certain things were true or not true. But primarily, we would just be using words. It was like you're giving a philosophical argument for something. So mathematics, like if you think mathematically, you may not know much about calculus. But if you think logically and you check each little step and you see, how does this influence this outcome? How does this relate to that? And is it all sound? Are there any problems or errors? And let's minimize those. Like, that's thinking mathematically. Like, and so it's funny because I talk to a lot of people who are very wealthy. Like one of my clients is the president of an energy company here in Houston. I mean, multi-billion-dollar company, right? And you talk to some of these people sometimes, and they on the surface will say, well, I'm not actually that smart. They'll say that, like, well, yeah, I mean, I'm pretty successful, but I'm not like the smartest guy or something like that. But if you took an average person and put them in their position, that person couldn't handle it. So they're thinking that because their idea of what is smart, they're looking at maybe Einstein. And they're thinking, oh, math or physics or whatever it is, if you know that stuff, you're smart. But if you just know how to run a multi-billion-dollar company that does fracking and offshore drilling and, like does oil deals and licensing and all, yeah, I'm not smart to deal with all that. But you just change all those words and make it like, gravity and this things. It's just as complex. It's just that it's less abstract, seemingly, than something like mathematics. So something like mathematics has this mystery about it, right? But it's really nothing special to it. Mathematics is not any more difficult than philosophy or chemistry or physics or painting or cooking or anything. It's just information. And if you know how to put it together, you can get a result. And if you put it together incorrectly, you get an incorrect result. You see what I mean? So parenting, right, is a vocabulary. Right? And that's why part of what we're doing is supporting parents to develop a vocabulary of a different way of interacting with your children. Because again, it's what you can do. Right? And so much of, I was laying in bed with Max last night because we always, Katie puts Seneca to sleep. I put Max to sleep. And we lay there until they fall asleep. And even if that takes a while. And as we were laying there last night, and I think we had the lights off at that point. So it was like, he's falling asleep. And he was like, hey, Dad, he goes, why do parents let their kids cry? Right? Because we had talked to him before about the fact of we put him to sleep and we're always there. And if he wakes up and cries, we'll come get him, or not get him out of the bed, but, come lay with him until he goes back to sleep, which usually takes like a minute or something if it happens. And through some conversation, which I don't necessarily remember all the details, we were talking to him about the fact that, sometimes parents, I think probably what happens is Katie and I will be discussing something and he'll pick up on it and then he'll ask us a question about what we're saying. And because we want him to be intelligent, we'll just explain whatever it is we're talking about, which you've seen us do when you were here, right? We don't just go, oh, it's not, you don't understand. No, we go, well, okay. And then I like search for what's the entry point of where I can start explaining what we're talking about to him, right? And so we've explained to him, like, some parents, they just put their kids in a bedroom by themselves and they make them go to bed. And if the kid cries, the parent just lets them cry. Not every parent does that. Some it's in between. Like, explain, there's context to it, right? So he was asking me about that last night. You know what I mean? He was like asking me to talk about it again. Like, he wanted to know more about it. He's like, why do some parents let their kids cry? Right? And so, and what I was explaining to him is that some parents don't understand that. Oh, and I said to him, I said, why? It's because they're concerned, or they may be even afraid that if they do what I'm doing, or if they, go in there and they lay with the kid and they, whatever the case may be, if they do that, then the child will always be dependent upon them and will never be able to go to sleep by themselves. So I explained to him that's why I'm not just like, because I'm a better parent than other parents, and they're all idiots. Like, no, I mean, I'm telling them, like, I understand why they do it. Like, I get it. Like, it's not because they're evil, it's because they don't know. They don't know that actually that is a form of trauma. If your kid just sits there and cries and cries and cries and cries, in fact, the younger it happens, it actually can create brain damage, like slight lesions in the brain. I mean, there's all the studies about it. Like, if a child cries much for too long time, it can actually create minor types of brain damage, right? And parents don't realize that, right? And I explained to him the context of, I explained to him the context of, well, let's just look at it. I said, parents, generally speaking, have to go to work, right? Which means they need to get a certain amount of sleep. And so, because we have a society where that's the general structure, parents have just accepted that the kids need to go to sleep. And so they don't necessarily have the time or the focus or the emotional kind of energy to really be patient and focus on that, because they're trying to focus on going out and getting a job. And that's why you've seen videos of Max where he's talking about giving everyone money, because we explained to him, if everybody just had enough money, well, then they wouldn't, like, everything would change. People would be able to now be, oh, okay, well, so I don't have to get up and go to work at this time necessarily. Otherwise, I can't survive. Like, just the basic fear of survival drives within our vocabulary is this assumption that survival is the most important thing. And if I don't just go along with the way things are, I can't survive. But I think that we're here to do more than just survive. We should survive, that's good, but survival in itself, and think about this, where do we even get this idea of survival from? Remember, you were in school, what did they teach you in biology? What's the driving force behind evolution?
Yeah, survival of the fittest.
See, you're being programmed with vocabulary from a young age. You see what I mean? And so, in very subtle ways, right? And it's funny too, when I see debates about creationism. This used to be a big debate. It's not so much anymore, but there was used to be a big debate about creationism versus evolution. What should we teach? They're the same fucking thing, because both philosophies teach you that there's no reason to change anything. You know what I mean? Like, there's no reason to question anything, because we're just the pinnacle of evolution, and there will be people smarter than us in the future, and there have been people dumber than us in the past, and we're just where we're at. Not everything's meaningless. We're on a ball spinning through the space in a void. Nothing has any meaning. Okay. On the opposite side, you have, well, everything is planned out. It's by design, and everything is the way it is because this is how it was supposed to be by design. And you are the way because of a reason, and other people are the way they are because of a reason. And there's no reason to question it because it's just the way it is. So there's nothing you can do about it. It's the same thing, because they're both actually nihilistic. Do you know what I'm saying? Because they both get you to believe that there's no meaning to this life. You're here for no reason other than to, in like on the religious side, you have people who believe that their purpose is to basically prove
get more people to get to heaven or something.
Prove their loyalty to the thing that they believe is going to take care of them. But isn't that kind of like this sort of, my parents didn't give me enough attention, and I feel like if I can just prove to them somehow that I'm worthy of it, then they'll take care of me, because they didn't prepare me for reality. Everyone knows that deep down. And I said to Katie before, when we first, even thought about having kids, and I'm going to give the statement, but then I'm going to contextualize it. But I always looked at it this way. When my children are older, I don't care if they ever want to talk to me. I don't care if they love me. I don't care if they want to be around me. I want them to, when they're adults and so forth, be so effective that they can just focus on what they want to focus on. Now, if I gave them everything they needed to do that, then of course they're probably going to want to be around. Like if I'm a person of value who contributes even then at that point in their life, because when they talk to me, I give them wise counsel or whatever it is, then they're going to want to talk to me. But I'm not going to parent them from the starting point of, I need to ensure that my kids still need me when I'm older. Emotionally, whatever. Like rather than be so stable that when they look at me as adults, they just see me as another person. You know, and even that point of, well, but I do want them to be grateful for what I did for them. Who cares? What good is that going to do me then, unless I have some emotional need to, when they express gratitude, be like, oh, there's that feeling I was looking for, because otherwise my life has no meaning. Do you know what I mean? So that doesn't mean, and see, it's funny because a parent would take what I'm saying and be like, that implies I'm going to neglect them. But like you've seen, we give to our children as much as we, you know what I mean? When I say give, I mean of our time, our energy, our focus, our attention, our explanation, everything. More, because I know the more I do now, the less I have to do later. But parents seem to think it's the opposite. Like the less that they give their kids now, they'll become more independent somehow, because they're thinking it's survival of the fittest. Like you got to prepare them to be fit to deal with this world. So you got to like train them up like you're training a boxer in a gym or something. It's like so ridiculous, you know? And like, you know, it's like, so you've been here, you've seen that I'm not just bullshitting. I'm not just saying one thing and doing another, you know, because like you see all these people online giving like parenting courses or giving advice about whatever, but they don't show you their result. And a lot of times they don't even have kids. They just like talk in theory.
So weird what's out there.
But the reason I bring it up is because, okay, I'll give you an example, right? There's very few limited things that we allow Max to do, like on like a phone, for example. There's a couple of shows, like Mr. Rogers is one example, of very specific shows that he's allowed to watch every once in a while, depending on the context. It's not like he's sitting around all day watching TV. No, we don't even have a TV, right? But there's certain specific things. And we explain everything to him. And without going into all the context right now, because I'm sure we're going to do a video about it at some point. I was just down there earlier bringing some groceries in because I went to get some groceries. And then he was here with Katie while Seneca's upstairs. And so Seneca was taking a nap. And that's one of the reasons why Max was watching a little Mr. Rogers or whatever it was. And so it's like for maybe 15 minutes while Seneca's asleep or being, you know, put down for a nap, just in that time period where she might wake up so Katie can just focus on her, right? And so Max is down there. And then I saw him on the couch when I came in eating some snacks, watching the little phone. And then 5 minutes later, I'm carrying groceries in. And the dog is somehow eating out of his snack bowl. He's not even there. And the phone's sitting there with the, you know, like the video had ended. And I hear him in the other room playing the piano. So like the video ended and he was just like, okay, done. Because Katie had explained to him, hey, we're just going to watch one video because of and here's the context as to why. And he's like, okay. That's not something that happened just by itself. Like in the beginning, when we first started allowing him to watch a few shows or maybe like play like a very specific kind of game on the phone, which isn't super stimulating and all this stuff, he, in the very beginning, he would ask us like every day, hey, when can I play that game? When can I play that game? And so we had to go through this process together of like, what are we going to do here? Are we going to restrict him from playing games at all so he doesn't become addicted? Is he too young? Do we just let him do whatever he wants and just hope, you know, like, no, remove all of that. Let's remove our fears first, that any kind of outcome we don't want is going to happen, so that we're not doing things based on trying to prevent something, meaning not prevent, but to assuage us emotionally of like, okay, at least I feel like I'm doing the right thing. No. And so we went through a little process over a few weeks, not even, where he might play a video game. And again, they're like these little games where they're not rewarding you. They're very specific that we check to make sure they're not in themselves programming him with something like rewarded or something like that.
Yeah.
But even then they're fun. So I understand why he wants to do it. I'm like, I love to play games when I was a kid. And I don't ever play video games now. So it's not like I got addicted. So I know it's possible to like play video games and not be addicted to them. If your life has meaning and you have a purpose, it's not a big deal. But that being said, you can also fuck with your dopamine reward system if you doing it the wrong way. So we have to understand that. So we don't want to, fuck him up from that perspective. That's just a practical, physical thing. But we went through a period with him where it was like, okay, only on Saturdays. Okay. Then he was every day was wondering if it was Saturday. Okay, let's just do it for, 15 minutes or an hour or whatever it was every day at a certain time. Okay. But then he was always asking during the day, what time can you play? Then we got to it was really interesting. Just past couple of weeks, we got to this point where we would say, okay, we'll play a game, 30 minutes or whatever the thing is. And then after that, so what we do is set a timer on our Alexa thing, right? And then the timer would go off. And then he would want to keep playing. And then one day he was playing the game and I was sitting there, and after the timer was going off and I was trying to talk to him like, hey, Max, it's time to stop playing the game. That was the timer, right? And he goes in there and he says, Alexa, set a timer for 15 or 10 minutes. So I'm like, okay. So then he comes back and starts playing. I'm trying to like talk to him and try to persuade him, because I'm not just going to take it out of his hand. Like it's not life or death. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. 10 minutes later, the timer goes off and he just goes, here you go, and then leaves. And we were like, that was interesting. So then what happened then from then on was he would get a 30-minute timer. And then after that, he would go tell her another timer for 10 minutes. And then when it was done, he would be done. And what's funny is the past like week or two, he hasn't even played games. He's not even asking us to. And it's like, it's fascinating because I wouldn't have predicted that. But I can see there's a lot of things that parents create by thinking that they're preventing it. It's like they're placing value on something. And when you place value on something, whether it's positive or negative, it makes it interesting. You know what I mean? It makes it something like the child wants to focus on. Like, why is it that you don't want me to look at it? Why can't I do it? Why don't you want me to do it? It must be something that's what they're thinking, right? Mm-hmm. So it's always like, we're always communicating, we're always expressing, we're always explaining, and allowing responsibility when we can. Another thing, he's mostly like, we never have any of these like meltdowns or anything that you see with a lot of kids. And even around like brushing his teeth, he's pretty cooperative. The past few weeks, he didn't seem to want to brush his teeth too much at night. I don't know why. I think he just likes to go immediately from the bathtub and go in the bedroom and play and read books. And it's not fun to brush your teeth. It's like, as a kid, it's not something that why would you want to do it? So I started kind of making it into a game, right? Kind of like, okay, well, we would pretend like we're playing with an airplane cockpit, like in the covers or whatever. I'd be like, well, I would tell him, I'm gonna program my cockpit. It only allows you in if you got clean teeth. And he would be like, oh, okay, why? And I would explain to him why we brush our teeth and stuff. And I would be like, so I'm like, it's just for pretend though. You understand? Like, we're just pretending. So I'm not to use some emotional force. You see what I mean? To manipulate him. Like, oh, I'm not going to play with you unless you brush your teeth. It was just more like, I'm playing a game with you now. And part of this game is when I brush your teeth, you can go into my cockpit in my airplane. And he has his own airplane, just like a game. And we would do that a little bit. And he would be like, okay, cool. And so he would let me brush his teeth, right? And then last night, he got out of the bathtub and he wanted to use the toilet. He had to poop, right? So he sitting on the toilet. And while he was sitting on the toilet, I was like, why don't I, or no, maybe it was in the bathtub, whatever the case may be. I was like, why don't I brush your teeth I think it was in the bathtub. Why don't I brush your teeth while you're in the bathtub? And he was like, no, I want to do it when I get out. And I was like, okay. And I said, but can we agree? Because last time we did that, you didn't want to do that. You wanted to go in the bedroom. And it's much easier if we do it in the bathroom. And I explained to him why. And he was like, yeah, we'll do it when I get out. And I was like, okay. So then he got out of the bathtub, and whenever, it was time. And then he was like, fresh here. And he looked at me and he kind of like looked down and he started running to like go out the door. And he thinks it's funny, like, oh, I'm getting out of here, right? And he's like laughing. But right before he got to the bathroom door, I go, hey, Max, before you go out, remember, we agreed that you're going to brush your teeth. We're going to brush your teeth before we go into the bedroom. That's what we agreed. And he was like, I know, but I'm going to break that agreement, right? And I said, okay. I said, but understand, whenever we make an agreement and then you break your agreement, what that means is I can't trust next time that you're going to honor your agreement. And I explained to it just like I'm saying it right now. And he stopped and he was like, okay. And he came back and let me brush his teeth. So, and keep in mind, we never punish him. he doesn't think like, well, if I don't do what dad says, I'm going to get punished. I'm going to get hit. I'm going to get something taken away. He saw, I'm explaining to him the real consequence of you not honoring the agreement you made is that I don't trust in the future when you are making an agreement with me. I won't be able to trust you that your agreement is valid, that you're going to stick to it. Right. And whatever went on in his little head, I don't know, but he was like, okay. And then came back to me. And there was no force in my voice. There was no like, well, okay, but next, no, nothing like that. It was just because the thing is, I'll stay up with him until midnight if necessary, while he's running around playing, not wanting to brush his teeth. That hasn't had to happen, you know what I'm saying? But I'm willing to do that. So it's not like, so he doesn't ever feel any threat of I'm going to punish him or do something, because of that. And those moments and temptations have come up within me as a parent. And the frustration came up at times, but I have the tools. I have TechnoTutor, so I can catch it before I act on it. If you want to know what ADD really is, it's acting on your impulse before the executive function steps in to prevent the action, right? So you have a higher increased processing ability, you can step in before the impulse to act occurs, right? And I'm not a doctor, I'm not saying I can cure ADD, right? That's my disclaimer. But my point is, as a parent, a lot of times we know we shouldn't do something, but it's like, it's too late. You already expressed it, right? And this, having TechnoTutor and increasing my own ability to process information, it's like I can step in instead of my emotions and feelings and all that doing it. And I can question things, and I can question why we do certain things and why we're asking him to do certain things or not do certain things, and communicate that effectively and not use emotion within it, but explain clearly. So he's developing like a really effective ability he's not even 3.5. Let's just say he's a 3.5-year-old to like listen to us and cooperate. And I mean, dude, I don't remember when you were here like in January, I think. Yeah. And I know you saw him in Mexico, but you'd be blown away even now, like how much it's changed, and like
I watched some of the videos on your page and stuff that Katie posts too, and it's just every single time there's something new.
But you see how what I'm explaining right now is a vocabulary around how to interact with your children. It's a way of doing, but it's based on a way of thinking and so forth and questioning, and parents typically, I think, have a very strong resistance to listening to anything that tells them how to parent, unless they're like kind of dire straits, like they're just fed up, with the situation, because we feel like I love my kids. I want the best for them. I don't know how to do better than I'm programmed how to do, although they wouldn't say it that way, but I don't know how to do any better than I am doing, because a computer can't do what it's not programmed to do. I love my kids. I want the best for them. I can't do anything different than how I'm already doing it. So cognitive dissonance steps in and says, well, there's nothing wrong with my parenting. You see what I mean? Like, because if I admit there is, then I have to admit, like, I'm kind of abusing my child. And that's the worst thing on the planet, which it is. But if we can be honest with ourselves and be like, every time I yell at my kid or hit them or punish them, I'm abusing them. I'm making them stupid. In the information age, making your child stupid is one of the highest forms of abuse. Obviously, sexual abuse, physical abuse, but not preparing them for the future is another form of abuse. Yeah. Because now as an adult, they have to live with that. And it's very difficult to change. It requires much more self-discipline to change it as an adult than it does as a child. I mean, you think it's hard dealing with your children, but try to deal with them as a teenager or as an adult who then has all these responsibilities to deal with. And I think that's where the parents find themselves. So they need that support. And that's really one of the things primarily that Katie and I want to give to others is that support of what we've walked through and what we've learned. And we're very happy if people take that and go even further. I don't claim to be the end all be all of parenting. It's more like the principles I'm operating from, that's what the difference is. It's not because I'm special, it's because of the principles I've adopted. It takes certain things off the table, and when you take off hitting your kids, when you take it off the table, guess what? You have to become way more creative. When you take off in any form of emotional manipulation whatsoever, you have to become really creative in how you express things. And you realize very quickly, oh, fuck, the reason why I'm always trying to manipulate and hit my kids or whatever it is because they can't understand me. They can't see the benefit themselves of what I'm saying, much less can I explain. So you increase the parent's ability to process, you increase the child's ability to process. Now you have an ability to communicate. And it's really funny because I don't know if you picked up this on the videos lately, but Max rarely calls Katie or I mom or dad anymore.
He calls you by their name?
And it's funny because, yeah, he calls Katie and he calls me Cam. And all it took was Katie one time telling him, hey, Max, just so you know, you can call me mom if you want, but you can also just call me Katie. It's fine either way. And then that week, all I heard him say was Katie, but he was still calling me dad, or he usually calls me Dada, right? And then she mentioned it to him, you can also just call Cameron Cam. You don't have to call him dad. And I was like, yeah, you could just call me Cam, but it's up to you. Now it's all Cam and Katie. It's fascinating. And it's really interesting because I had to walk through that little thing that came up of like, oh, but he's just calling me Cam, like he's just equal to me or something. I'm like, oh, whoa, where did that come from? Like, where did that little program come from? Like, yeah, it is challenging that point. Like, and of course, as a parent, that doesn't mean he should decide everything that he gets to do because he doesn't have the context to understand that.
Yeah.
So we still make decisions, but we, as much as physically possible, we include him in the decision so we can understand it. So he's cooperating.
That's an important distinction.
Yeah, so he's cooperating with it instead of us just having to force him to do it. Which one is more fun, cooperating or forcing? I mean, it's much more fun if the kid just cooperates, know? And so you feel better about it, and you just don't have any of what most parents, I think, probably take for granted as like emotional meltdowns and temper tantrums and begging and fits and like fighting and like it just doesn't happen. We don't have any of that.
So Cameron, what would you say? Because I know a lot of parents who are, one, I'm sure fascinated by how you parent, but two, saying that's like a whole nother level. I like Cameron's family must be special. His kids must be special. Like, I can't do that, or that's just so far removed from my day-to-day reality. It's like you almost just say, that's good for him. I'm just going to keep doing my thing. So what's like a practical step in a direction that could lead to a better parent-child relationship?
Well, it's as simple as starting with the points that you see are really giving you the most problems. And then redefining the situation of what you're looking at. What is you're trying to get? What are you trying to prevent? I wish there was an answer that was like, okay, let's say you're a parent who just wants to like see Cameron and Katie as like amazing special people, but I'm just the average parent. I just want to half-ass it. I just want all the results, but I don't really want to change or anything. Look, I'm sorry. Like, maybe what we're talking about isn't for you. Like, it's not easy. But I think that deep down, I don't know if I can say most. I'm just assuming most people deep down want to just like have a passion for life. That's like what people are missing. Maybe not everybody, maybe not most, maybe there's only a few. Okay. But my goal, what I want to contribute to, is changing the system that's running education and economics and everything in our world. Because if there's people in this world who right now, let's say they can't hear me, or like, let's just say their education is so low and their environment is so poor, there's no way they could listen and take on and do the things I'm talking about. Number one, TechnoTutor would help them tremendously anyways. It's going to raise their education level. It's going to raise that of their kids. But even that aside, those people can be helped by alleviating the financial pressure that we're all feeling in that survival kind of mode and mentality. And so some things are only going to shift at a systemic kind of a level. So what we're all about is creating a new education system, a new economic system, right? Not putting band-aids on things, because we live in a sort of closed system where everything affects everything else. You can't just change something here and then it's just common sense. Like, you can't make your life okay and then everyone else is screwed. Eventually, it's going to come back to haunt you. So I would say, rather than what can just somebody who kind of just wants a little tip, what can they do? I would say rather, I'm looking for those who are like, man, this is really cool. I don't know right now if I can go all as far as you're talking about, but I see the potential. I don't feel like I was even prepared to be a parent, even up to the first year of having a child. And we had to figure things out very quickly. Now, having walked with these principles for a number of years and having had TechnoTutor, I think it prepared me in a lot of ways, but I'm just saying I didn't even still feel prepared at that point. So just because someone might feel like, well, I mean, it's too far gone, I'm not even going to try. Like that's stupid. Like you'd be surprised how something simple can shift a lot. So it's actually a lot easier than you think. You know, I guess the basic point, you have to be honest with yourself. But that can be difficult in the beginning, because when we're honest with ourselves, we have to face a lot of negative feelings and stuff, because that's what being honest with yourself is. And if you don't really have a way to process that, that can be very overwhelming, right? So what we're talking about is kind of like a just do this one little thing. It's several things, right? But really, who we're looking to work with is people who hear what we're saying and are like, man, I really like that. And I honestly think people can do better than us, just taking on these principles and learning from what we're doing. That's the point. It's not about us being the paragon. It's about other people seeing like, hey, this that seems to work. Let me take that and go even further and explore it and take it on, because it's going to look different in each person's life anyways. But you need the tools to increase your processing ability. That's TechnoTutor. And also to understand, how does your psychology actually work? Because the current psychology that exists in this world in terms of systems of psychology is more designed to just get you back into the workforce and stop questioning things. We're talking about, how do I actually, like, if I'm dealing with myself, if I have to take full responsibility for myself, how does my mind actually work? Like, how do I uncover all the stuff that's within me that I can't see with my own eyes, right? That's kind of like that's running my life, but I can't see with my eyes right now immediately.
They're like thoughts, feelings, emotions, the
Exactly.
inner chatter.
Right. And then even at the levels of the unconscious that you literally cannot consciously be aware of, but unless through a process of understanding and so forth. But then also, how do you actually change those things at a physical level, like on your hard drive, so to speak, right? So it's not just one thing, it's a kind of combination of things, right? And I know if people are interested in that, they can talk to you and you can point them in the right direction, right? So I'm not here to get followers or something, or necessarily people to come asking me a lot of questions. I'm happy to answer questions, but really, I want people to go back to you so you can support them and look at it from that perspective. Of course, they're going to get access to Katie and I and everybody else that's in our network anyways, right? But I guess the real point is, if parents don't start taking responsibility for how their children are being educated, our society is just going to continue like collapsing in on itself. Because the way we educate children is the foundation for how the society exists. If you want a nation of communists, educate the children to be communists. If you want them to be capitalists, educate them to be capitalists. If you want them to see people as equal, educate them that way. If you want them to care about other people, educate them that way. But it's not enough to just care and have compassion, because it seems like in this world, the people who are really good people, they get screwed over the most. So it's not about being good or being bad. It's about having common sense and understanding how reality works and how we can create a system that takes care of everybody. We have the technology. It's just a matter of whether we have the desire and whether we're willing to forgive ourselves, forgive the past, let go of all the bullshit, let go of the need to feel superior to other people, or to have other people apologize to us. It's not about forgiving somebody else or them forgiving you. It's about you forgiving yourself for what you're holding on to that prevents you from operating in the way you need to operate to contribute to this world, right? And that then gives other people space to be like, oh, maybe I could just let go of what was holding me back too, and that's really the only way the parents are going to be able to have an impact with their kids, is if they start letting go of the past and actually changing it. Not just letting go of the past, meaning, okay, well, I forgive my dad. No, that's not actually, I'm assuming you can still hear me, yeah?
Yep.
My thing changed. Like, when you forgive the past and you let go of the past, but within it, you're still blaming, you know what I mean?
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm like, okay, literally there's this thing inside of me, this thought, feeling, whatever it is. I'm operating from that thing as if it's valid. I have to let it go. I have to look at things with a new set of eyes. I have to look at the world differently. I have to look at my children differently. I have to look at everything in my relationships differently from the starting point of where am I allowing any point of I'm just trying to take without giving equally, or even just allowing that. Again, I'm not saying go give to homeless people. How does that help you? You know what I mean? Like that actually puts you in a worse off situation because now you get, I mean, when do you stop doing that? Literally just give all your money away? Like that doesn't make sense. Like if we had a system where everything we needed was taken care of, which can be designed through technology, right? What's the major fear people are going to have? Oh, that sounds like communism. Da, 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 da.
If they don't work, people aren't going to be motivated if they don't, get
Okay.
a paycheck. Work for
I'm
a
glad
paycheck.
you said that. I was just thinking about this yesterday, man. I want to see what you think about this. Sometimes when I come up with something, I don't necessarily know how to express it right away. So this will be a guinea pig thing. What is it? Like, okay, let's say you're an entrepreneur, right? And you're one of these entrepreneurs who wants to like make a difference and stuff. What is it that you're trying to like make it in a way where you can provide something to the world at as low cost as possible that really improves their lives and helps them so they can do less and get more benefit? Yeah, isn't that like kind of what an entrepreneur wants to do? So why is it that we exalt that idea, but then we're like, oh, but people just want to sit and not even go to work or anything and just expect things to come to them? Like, isn't that what we're expecting the entrepreneurs to create? Do you know what I mean? Like, if you really want to help the world, why wouldn't you create things where people don't have to work anymore? Well, then nobody would work. Okay, but if everybody had everything they needed and that didn't impose on you, what's the problem with that? Well, what's the problem? Then there could be way more Picassos and Mozarts and stuff like that, like stuff that would actually make our world really cool. Janitors, like things, devices that, but don't just create a device that cleans the toilet and then now that janitor has no job and his kids can't even eat. See, that's the problem, right? Create a device that cleans toilets for us and then create a system where the guy who was the janitor can now have the time to educate himself and fucking do something amazing with his life instead of having to be a fucking janitor. You know what I mean? No one likes cleaning their toilets, whether it's for money or whether you're cleaning your own toilet, And I'm sure with human ingenuity, we could create all kinds of systems and solutions for these things where people don't have to work as much and it doesn't infringe. And this is the problem. We've been so brainwashed, this is part of our vocabulary, that if there's people who aren't working, okay. So really what you're saying is you don't want you didn't want Mozart to ever exist. You know what I mean? You didn't want like Picasso ever to exist, or Van Gogh, or any creative
Michelangelo. Although
you know what I mean? Like, and I know historically, like those people were paid to do that. I get that, right? But I think if you talk to artists, they're not doing it necessarily for the money. Like they just like being creative. Like they would do it if they had all their basic needs met, they would just go to town on doing that thing if they could. They're not doing it because they think they're going to become a millionaire. Because very few artists who become millionaires, you know what I mean, who become rich doing what they're doing. It's usually not till way after the fact, especially like painting and sculpture and stuff like that. And I'm not trying to overemphasize the value of painting. It's just an example, but we don't even know what level of creativity humanity could have if 99% of humanity was not enslaved within just trying to keep the engine running to produce the stuff that we need. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then you see something like what's going on with the coronavirus thing, and you see it all come to a grinding halt. And then it's like, oh, fuck. Now everyone's, I don't know, I can't speak for everybody, but I think a lot of people are like, well, fuck, man, it'd be really nice if right now I didn't have to worry about money. It's like, well, yeah, no shit. What if you could feel like that all the time? Right? That'd be pretty cool. And I don't believe that people would just sit around doing nothing. That's part of education. If you're sitting around doing nothing, that means you're probably low education, low vocabulary. Because I don't like being bored, do you? No. Like, I'd rather be learning something, creating something, doing something. I don't want to just sit around and do nothing. The only time I really like to do that kind of stuff is when I'm doing so much stuff that I really don't want to be doing. I'm kind of stressed about it, and that starts to compound inside of myself. And I just want some kind of release from that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because right now people aren't having to go to work every day. And instead of just wanting to sit and like just kind of do nothing, they're all like going to the park and like doing stuff. You know what I mean? And I think part of that is like, oh, I mean, I don't have to feel guilty about not going to work. I can't go to work. So, I mean, you know, what I want to do with my time. You know what I mean? They're not even thinking about work anymore. So they're like, well, what I like to do. And people will become creative, you know, and there'll be people who do stupid shit and spend the money on like $10,000 worth of Doritos and then starve to death. And okay, well, that person was stupid. Can't help that. But that's better than deliberately starving people because we just don't want to, you know what I mean? Like, just want to be like spiteful or something, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that with education becoming a point where people increase their ability to process, people will start to see with more common sense, like a better world is definitely possible, right? And then those are the people who create the solutions that then everybody else becomes lifted up and so forth. So so when we talk about equality and stuff like that, we're not talking about some government authoritarian imposing things on everybody else, which is the image that most people have. If everybody was raised up, people say, well, who would work at McDonald's? Well, dude, they're replacing everybody at McDonald's with kiosks anyways. So all these old arguments people would normally have are just going out the window anyways. It's like, well, now we need to do something because those people are out of a job because they wouldn't be working at McDonald's if they could be programming software or whatever. You know what I mean? Like they wouldn't be there in the first place. So we have to come up with solutions. But that starts with education, you know, and the ability to process information. If you're feeling yourself going into fear about this whole coronavirus, I'll guarantee you one thing, you have a low vocabulary in some way because it doesn't frighten me at all, right? It really doesn't. Like there's no, oh, the world's collapsing, it's ending. There's nothing there. I'm just like, okay, cool. People are realizing that we can't go on as it was before, you know, but then the people with the emotion to be able to do what needs to be done, that's the ones everyone's grateful for. So if you could become a person like that who's stable within what seems like a storm, people will value that. You'll become a more valuable person from that perspective, right? So I don't know, what else? I'm getting all these messages while we're chatting. I wonder.
Oh, nice. I had to close Facebook. Man, WeWork's Wi-Fi, I thought on the weekend it would be good, but like every, I don't know, couple minutes it like glitches a little. But
really?
Yeah, I don't know. I got to send him a message.
Well, I think because everybody's at home. No one. You mean specifically where you're at?
Well, it's the WeWork, and there's a few people here, but yeah, I don't think anyone's done the whole like reset of the Wi-Fi recently. So yeah, it's like wild west here.
Wrong, but I think that sometimes when you watch the replay, it's not actually a problem. I don't know that for sure because I feel like maybe it's just on your end, but then the actual Zoom server is getting I don't know. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
I've watched replays where it seems like there was a problem, like the other person was like, oh, I'm having these problems, but then watching it, you don't see any issues. So I don't know.
Nice.
But
nice.
People can fill in the gaps. They can just interpret what I'm saying however they want.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. I mean, that was very insightful. Yeah, I just see it's stuff we've been talking about for a while with seeing automation coming, seeing the fact that Amazon just opened up Amazon Go, right? That's their store. Not even Whole Foods, a different grocery store where you can just go in, take things off the shelf. Like there's no cashiers.
Right.
I know that they're going to come up. So there's going to be no people who need to stock the shelves either. It's just going to be conveyor belts. Like that's where it's headed. But everyone's like, oh, that's in 20 years. I'm just trying to get through the week. Right. Well, now.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Now it's so obvious, like, oh shit, you're this is what your life would be like in a world of automation without a solution for your education, your jobs, and so forth. Mm-hmm. You know, but I mean, there's so much opportunity. You could sitting at like there's people right now who sit at home and run businesses from their computer.
Yeah.
So if people can do that now, the only reason why someone else can't do it is because they've just put all of their eggs into the basket of going to a job. So what does that mean? They need to re-educate themselves and figure out how can I make money in the digital age, right? And I mean, obviously with TechnoTutor, what's the biggest problem everyone's facing is real education, because the system hasn't supported them. So unless you got lucky, I mean, you're screwed, your kids are screwed, right? That's like with with Max, he's already reading at, I guess you could say it's a second grade level. I mean, it's hard to measure these things because even in first and second grade and so forth, they're still just measuring the child's memorization. He's not memorizing anything. Like, he can just read stuff and understand it. So it's like a whole different level. The only reason I say first or second grade is just the level of the vocabulary itself that he can read. That's why I usually give it those labels, right? So he's not just reading cat and dog. Like, he can look at a thing and be like, that says diminished, or that says augmented, or that says, you know, whatever. It's like the words that he can read is a lot higher than what, I don't even know what level that would be technically.
Yeah, and then use them too. Because like when I was there, we were in the backyard, and we were like, he was showing me some stuff in the garden, and then he has his little toy car, and he goes, Mitch, he goes like, shoo. He's like, Mitch, guess what it just did? I'm like, drove away? He's like, it vanished.
Right.
I'm like,
that's the natural
what
learning.
is Max going to be doing when he's 18, right?
What's he going to be doing when he's 9?
I know.
I mean, what was Warren Buffett doing? He had a business at that age.
Yeah.
You know,
he had
like,
every book in the library.
It's like right now, Max likes to go to the digital piano, scroll through the library. He remembers the numbers of all the songs that he likes in the digital library, so he can punch them in digitally, and mess with the tempo and like change. You know, he likes to just mess. It's like this digital piano, and then he'll go play with the synthesizers and do stuff there and change like all these different, you know, features and effects and stuff on there, and like that's the kind of stuff he likes to do. And then he's over there playing with some cars, and he's like, you know, I mean, he's a normal kid, except he just has a high vocabulary and ability to understand things. So I kind of I guess in a way, take it for granted sometimes, not in a bad way. It's just, to me, it's just totally normal. Nothing weird about it at all. But he can communicate with you, and he can explain things and ask questions and understand at a level that, I mean, I had a brother, you know, when I was in high school. He was born when I was 16. So I've been around little kids, you know, plus also being around little kids just in my general experience and so forth. So I know where a child should be at 3.5 and so forth, plus working in the education industry and so forth. But in terms of us living with that every day, it's just very normal, but it makes things easier. Like, I don't, you know, you see these memes right now where parents are like in some way expressing something negative about the fact that their kids are home with them, you know? Like, I saw this woman typing at a computer, and the kids were like duct taped to the floor. And it said something about she needed like a moment of, you know, peace or something. I'm like, that's so fucked up, you know? Like, we don't feel that. I don't feel that way. You know, if we want some time to ourselves, we wait until 7:30. We read books to them, we put them in bed, they fall asleep, and then we come downstairs around 8 or 8:30 or whatever, and then we have time to ourselves. You know, like, that's just how it works. But I mean, when they're 5 and 6, they're going to be way more self-driven, self-disciplined. So even the idea of like, well, all the years of homeschooling and all this stuff, dude, you put enough vocabulary into the child, and then they can read, and then you teach them from the principles of, you know, investigate all things, keep what's best, you know, and you give them guidance, and they trust you. So when you say like, you know, I don't want you just exploring on the computer, on the internet, you know, because there's obviously a lot of stuff out there, and we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But having resources for them, having books, for example, I mean, when I was a kid, I loved just like finding books and like going through stuff, you know. So I had 6 or 7 or 8 or whatever, like there's not going to be a lot of that they need from us, you know. And Max, now he'll go and get the laptop off the counter. He'll go open it up. He'll turn on TechnoTutor on his vocabulary builder, and he'll go on there and start doing word lists now. I watched him do it twice now. And I was like, because normally I'm already in my office at that time, but I'm here now, you know, a little bit more. And I'm like, and he's over there doing word lists. And then he like leaves and goes plays the piano and then comes back and he's like doing word lists. I'm like, holy shit, he's only 3.5. I thought that was going to be like 5 and 6 or something. But we never forced him to do that. It's just now he's suddenly taken an interest in doing that. Like, okay, and now he can type it himself and everything, right?
And what do you say to parents that get hung up on that point of like, oh, so is your kid, like, how are you going to teach your kid to respect you or respect adults? Or is your kid just going to walk all over you? Like, because I've heard that too, of like, well, you should discipline your child because then they know to respect authority and all that, which I kind of see where they're coming from, but you and Katie clearly have this better view on it.
Well, yeah, and I know what you're talking about. That whole idea is just bullshit. I don't have respect for anybody that doesn't deserve respect as an adult. As an adult, okay. So if as a person, as a child, you need to respect people in authority. That's the idea, right? Because they're the authority, right? Okay. So then every single person in America, whether you like it or not, you need to have absolute respect for both Donald Trump and Barack Obama. And don't ever say anything negatively about either one of them, or any president, or any politician, or any police officer, or anybody in any position of authority. In other words, would you apply that same standard to the child as an adult? Or is it you just want them to do that because you don't like being questioned, because you don't know why the fuck you're saying that they should do the things you're telling them to do, because you're just going along with something that you didn't think through yourself. So like if Max questions me, like the other day, oh man, what was it? I'm trying to remember what it was, but he was like, Dad, no, you're not correct. And I was like, what do you mean? What am I not correct? And I forget what it was, but it was something. And I was like, oh, well, let me explain, because he didn't have the context. So then he was like, oh, because I had said something, and he was like, no, you're not correct. I'm not like, what the fuck did you say? Like that's what my parents would have done. Like I get it. It's not like I'm just magically, no, like I had to question those things. But you were here. Did you ever see him be disrespectful?
No, I would see sometimes as adults, we'd be like getting into it, talking about business, talking about money or something. And Max would go, wait. And then,
yeah.
What are you talking about?
Yeah. What's interesting is he doesn't do that anymore. So what'll happen is with Max, for example, we'll go through periods where there'll be some kind of behavior like that, where he'll be like, everybody, stop talking. Yeah. But we would say, hey, Max, and you see, we never punish him. We're always like, hey, Max, what's a better way you can get our attention? Here's another strategy. We'll teach him. What you could do is come up to us and say, hey, Dad, can I be in the conversation, or whatever it is? And it seems like it's not changing. That behavior might go on for a week or two, but we just keep consistent with it. 2 weeks later, we already forgot that was a thing, because it doesn't happen anymore. And this applies to lots of situations. So I'm not trying to paint some picture like Max is just compliant with everything. Like there's parts where he'll challenge us, but we don't go into a reaction about it and a force and a punishment. So he never sees us being inconsistent emotionally within ourselves. You see what I'm saying? So he sees it as, it's like it's a stable point, right? So it's not like, there will be behaviors that he might have picked up from seeing something, or that might just be in him genetically because we pass it on to him or something like that. They say genetically you have information from the past 7 generations in your family, right? So I'm not going to punish him for something that he's doing. All that does is teach the child there's something wrong with him and they don't know why. So instead, I'd rather explain to him, here's what's ineffective about that behavior. Here's why it's not acceptable. Here's how I suggest you could change it. And here's why. Does it make sense? And then the next time it happens, about that behavior, here's how you could change it, etc. Next time it happens, here's what's unacceptable. Eventually he makes the change, but it comes from himself. So now he's taking responsibility for it. Just like I was talking about earlier about when he was, with the brushing the teeth, or breaking agreements or whatever it is. So like, what do you as an individual want to be treated as? You can decide for yourself, and you can make the choice. Don't we say everyone has free will? But not children, apparently. Well, so the way God designed the universe was no one has free will until 18. Like once you get your ID card, you know, government issued ID card, God's like, okay, bam, you get free will. No, you see what I mean? Like we all have a will, and we can either be forced into submission, like fear, or I mean, think about this. What's the one thing that we're not doing to him is passing fear onto him. So he's not going to go like, why do people look up to someone like Bill Gates or Warren Buffett or Elon Musk? Wouldn't you agree those guys don't have any fear? You know what I mean? Like they don't care what you think about them. They don't care what you think about what they want to do. They don't care what you think about anything. They're like, dude, I'm gonna fuck. Like I'm doing what I'm doing, and I'm doing shit you wish you could do. That's how they live their lives. Somebody wasn't beating them down into like, I just need someone to tell me what to do, or I need to ask permission for things or whatever. Like, so the idea that you need to respect your authority and all this shit, that's just like low vocabulary, not knowing how to express yourself and just demanding that other people listen to you because you're the authority. But when you go to work, do you feel like that towards your boss? Like I should just listen to everything he says. I should never question anything my boss says. He's the authority. I should just give him respect. No, like my boss is a fucking asshole. It's like you're actually doing so. So you know where the children learn to disrespect you? From you. You're now punishing them for something that they got from you. And so the child learns to disrespect you even more because they know it came from you. So the reason why Max doesn't disrespect us is because I'm not disrespecting him. I'm not disrespecting Katie. She's not disrespecting me. Like we're not like spitefully like teasing each other and nagging and doing all these spiteful things. And if someone does do that, the other person calls it out and they say it's unacceptable. And then we look at it and we forgive ourselves and we apologize to each other. And we're like, this is what I realized. And we open it up. You know, and if I do something where I did something to Max, I tell him, you know what? I realized I made a mistake the other day. Remember Max, whenever we were doing this and I said this and then that you did that and then I was saying this and then, you know, that was a mistake. I was wrong about that and I apologized, right? And I looked at it for myself and I explained that stuff to him. And he's like sitting there playing with his car. He's like, okay, Dad, you know, but then but it gets in. He understands. You know, and so it's like a total different dynamic shift, but it's just simply questioning the principles from which you do things. That's really all it is. And I'm not saying it's quick. And there may be, like, for example, this video right now, maybe this isn't something that would convince anybody who's like, I just want my kid to be like everybody else and like get good grades in school and stuff like that. So maybe they would listen to this video and not see any value in it whatsoever. Okay, fine. So maybe that person, you would talk to them about the fact that if they use TechnoTutor, their child's going to be top of the class if they use it effectively and they do how we suggest. It has that benefit too. So if you also want to take your own personal life to a whole nother level of like, I mean, bliss, for lack of a better word, you know, because whenever your relationships just work and people cooperate, it just feels really good. You feel really good all the time. And it doesn't mean you're not affected by world events or things that happen, but generally speaking, your life is a much higher quality because you're just not annoyed the whole fucking time. You know what I mean? And then when you see somebody who annoys you, you're like, man, I have the tool and the ability to support them to stop being so annoying because they're dumb. Because that's really where things come from. It's just we're programmed. There's no such thing as dumb people. There's only programmed people. You're either programmed to understand something or you're not. And so the more we can take responsibility for ourselves, our children, and so forth, and support other people, we can raise the standard of education and intelligence really in this world, and things will just, you know, gradually get better and better and better, right? But the more we rely on other people who are in the positions of authority to take care of all of us, well, we can all see what's the consequence of that. It's not good. You know, and like I said, people like Bezos and all these guys, they don't care. They don't care about us. I'm not judging them. I'm not saying they're bad people. I'm just saying they don't need to care. They're good. They got the robots and they figured it all out. They're planning for a world where we don't exist anyways, right? So if we want to take care of ourselves, if you really believe in like survival of the fittest, well, then you need to evolve. Like that's the bottom line.
Yeah, great point.
But that can only be done at an individual level because the whole forcing everything from the top down, that's an old way of doing things. It doesn't work anymore in an information age, because everyone can see like, hey, but I can do what that guy can do, and I can do this, and I can do that. And so people are questioning a lot more because there's so much more access to information and so forth. Right. So the only way moving forward as humanity is to evolve, to increase our abilities to process and so forth. I think in a very short time, we could have a generation where everyone is as smart as Elon Musk. You know, it is possible, and the parents don't have to already be that smart, but they're going to have to get smart as well. Because I mean, if your child is learning primarily from you, and you're stupid, and you don't know a lot about things, and you don't even know what's in the algebra textbook, what kind of basic respect do you think your child has for you when you can't remember what's in the algebra book that you're telling them is so fucking important that they can't go out and play on the weekend unless they learn it, and you don't even remember it, to the point where you can be like, oh yeah, factoring quadratic equations, well, there's a lot of different methods, and let me just start by talking about Descartes' law of sines, and we'll do this and blah blah blah. Like, you can just start talking about it, and they're like, oh, okay, cool. And you're just having a conversation casually while you're like walking in the mall about how to factor quadratic equations. Instead, you're like, oh, okay, we got to set aside 3 hours for homework, and we got to sit down and focus, but I got to get dinner done. It's like, dude, we're Maxon's learning us, and Seneca's learning from us just by us being out at the park. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be like some education is a lot less formal than people think it has to be. It seems formal because the only context we know for education is the schooling system, which is really similar to the office, work environment. They're the same thing. But now all that's being turned on its head, and people are like, oh, I don't have to go sit in a classroom for 8 hours a day? Oh, interesting. Imagine within less than 30 minutes, you can not only become smarter, but you can read more than you could the previous day. And so you take a book that you want to read, and you just upgrade yourself with that vocabulary so that when you read it, you understand it basically the first time. Okay, it's going to take time to get to that point, but you can get yourself to the point where you can read a book. As long as you have the vocabulary downloaded into you, you can read and understand and comprehend that book and then apply it. Now imagine what you can do, right? You can start solving real problems because whatever knowledge you need to integrate to be able to solve it, you can get that information, right? John Taylor Gatto talked about this a lot, and he made a really cool point about, think about if you wanted to solve a problem, and then, oh man, I need to learn how trigonometry works. Okay, let me go learn trigonometry real quick. Instead of teaching them a bunch of random stuff out of context, you can learn the trigonometry when you need it. It's like me when we started doing this with TechnoTutor. I'm like, dude, I need to fucking understand neuroscience. So I just got every neuroscience book I could and studied it. And I'm like, oh, so that's how neurons actually work. I mean, they don't teach you any of that stuff. You know what I mean? Like you were a psychology major. I remember taking a psychology course in college, and they mentioned something about the neurons, and you kind of understand a little bit, but they're not telling you about like how the actual receptors work and the fact that it's like a chemical receptor and all these. They're not going into like that level of detail. You're not learning the biochemistry and all that stuff, But having a high vocabulary, you can read those books yourself, and then now you understand neuroscience. And they say, well, but you don't have a degree in it. So what? Like, I'm not interested in the degree. I'm interested in the understanding. I don't care about the degree. I'm not trying to go get a job as a neuroscientist, Yeah.
And being able to apply it, especially at a time like this, like I really have been wanting to level up my understanding of like content marketing, which I've known for a while somewhat, but like what really is something that gets people's attention, and like what makes people want to share certain types of content. So I just grabbed 3 books by Seth Godin, who I know is a great marketer.
Yeah.
I threw it in TechnoTutor, and I just read the 3 books, and it was in like, I think 2.5 hours, I read 3 books. I came up with a list of stuff. I was like, this is what makes content really good in this day and age. It's different than it was in the 90s, different than the 80s, 70s. Cool, throw it in TechnoTutor, bam, bam, bam. Now I just apply it. It's awesome. It is the closest thing I've seen to in the Matrix, where they're like in a helicopter, like, I need to fly a helicopter. Okay.
Have you read this?
No.
Rory Sutherland, right?
Okay.
Right. I think you would really like this book. I don't know why I didn't mention to you when we were here. He's also got TED Talks and stuff, so you could watch the videos or read the book. If you watch his TED Talks and then you read the book, you're like, oh, I already fucking know all this. Like, he says the same stuff and everything, right? He's really good. Smart guy. But I think you'll like it too, because there's like psychological elements and everything too. But it was making me think about that from those books you were mentioning with Seth Godin and all that. Also, there's a book called Resonate by Nancy. I think it's like Duarte, Duarte.
Okay.
And then she has a set of books, and they're all about like creating visual presentations that tell stories and so forth. And she has another one called Illumination or something like that. But I would check those out too. I'm just mentioning them too now before I forget. But
and this is how I think, is because when you recommend these books, I just make a note, and then I either get them on Amazon or the library, and then I just use TechnoTutor so I can read it once and it's in there. It's not like, oh, I need to have the book and read it twice and highlight it and reread my notes. It's like, you just do it once, take the information, you apply it, you get the result, and you're like, that was awesome.
All right.
That's real work.
So here's the real red pill. Okay. So we waited 2 hours to get to it. All right. Here's the real red pill. We've all been brainwashed to no longer be able to learn. Okay. That's what the school system and parenting, and I'm not saying anybody was to blame. You know, it's like, I'm not like, oh, parents trying to hurt us or blah, blah. I'm just saying we've all been brainwashed, and I don't know, that's the best word I can come up with, to not be able to learn. The reason I say brainwashed is because you can undo it. You know what I mean? If I just said we've been like destroyed or something like that's like, oh, well, we're screwed. Like, no, I mean, we think that the way you learn is by highlighting and taking notes and all this stuff and trying to remember the information, but that's not actually learning. So it's hard for people to wrap their minds around what else could it be. It's like, it's called understanding. If you understand something, then you can apply it. Like, I mean, you know this, like anything that you've understood, you've just been able to apply it. It wasn't like, but how do you know how to apply it? It's like, if you understand it, you just start doing it. You know what I mean? Like with online marketing, for example, okay, I understand what I need to do, start doing it. If it's not working, there was something missing, and you got to go understand that part of it or whatever it is. So applying it is like just like the natural outflow of comprehending, you know, like that's all it is. Like, it's not like Bill Gates has figured out some secret to applying the information he's learned. No, he's just actually learned it. You know what I mean? He actually understands what he's doing. And this is the problem, is like, it's so obvious, but we've been put through a system where the goal was never to make us good at applying something. It was only to make us good at remembering something. That's why everyone knows, you talk to anybody, I went to college and all this stuff, and then when I got to job, I learned everything on the job. Because literally nothing you learned in school was of any value whatsoever.
Or it was like, oh, liberal arts, you learn how to learn. So you learn philosophy, you learn literature.
How come those people are least effective in society?
Exactly. Exactly. You graduate from a 4-year degree and you end up being like a barista or like doing some administrative.
If they really knew something, they'd be like out there fucking inventing shit and stuff like that.
Yeah. Brokering.
What it is it takes the people who actually have a certain level of potential, or maybe even they just don't like doing certain things, so like they enjoy maybe like reading and being creative or whatever, and then puts you through a process where you're brainwashed just like everybody else to not learn anything anymore. So but just by giving you stuff that you think that you'll like. While I always say, you know why they teach chemistry and math and so forth in school? Is so that the parents will feel like their children are learning something while they're being brainwashed. Because if they literally didn't have any math or science or anything, they would feel like, why aren't they learning anything? Because what's really going on in school is you're being taught to sit in a room for several hours at a time, not question the person in the front, do what you're told, complete things on time. So by the time you get through the school system, if you're at the top of your class, what does the system know? Okay, you can be trusted to go to work every day at a certain level in a position of a certain position in the company and produce a certain result consistently. We can trust you because you put all your reports in time. They call them reports, just like in the job. Like, where's your report? I didn't see the report. You know, you can give a presentation in front of the class, just like you can give a presentation in front of your group that you're managing or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, they're all things that, okay, we know that it's like, think of school system as more of a filtering of the people who are capable of performing at a certain level That way we can kind of sift them out. It's like a sifting filtering system. John Taylor Gatto said it was the propedeutic function, right? And I think he got that from somebody else, some Harvard guy or something, whatever. Mm-hmm. Oh no, it was one of these guys. Dang. It's up there somewhere. But anyways, yeah, I would also highly recommend anybody who's like, I really want to like, digest this red pill, go watch everything that John Taylor Gatto has on YouTube. He just died last year, but he's like amazing. He'll like,
oh, I didn't know he died.
And he's not some conspiracy theory guy, right? He's just telling you like it is, like this is the history.
And he was New York City, New York State Teacher of the Year multiple times. Like he worked his way up in the system. Like he knew the system through and through.
Oh no, he got such amazing results with students and stuff that they were like, wow, this guy's great. And they would give him awards and shit.
Yeah.
And but then of course they didn't like what he was doing at the same time.
Yeah. And that's the thing is that like I see when it's like, okay, the teacher or the student can sit in the classroom and they turn in their report on time. They know how to follow instruction. That creates an orderly society. Without it, we would have anarchy. We would have chaos. But it's like, okay, that system got us here.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that system going to get us to the next level? No.
See, that's what we're seeing now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if it was just coronavirus, if it was just pandemic, that wouldn't really get people to see it. Mm-hmm. What people are seeing right now is that, okay, if something happens where we all can't work, we're fucked. It's opening people up to that realization. Mm-hmm. But now we have to add to that. And this is why we have to go to people one-on-one and educate them, have them just kind of, why one-on-one? Because then you can see what they understand or don't, and you can clarify. Mm-hmm. Right? If you just do a big seminar for a bunch of people, you don't know who's really understanding you, right? Mm-hmm. So we know now that if something big happens and we can't go to work, we're screwed. What we have to realize is automation, eventually it's going to be a reality. It's not just temporary. It's going to be like slowly but surely, like they're replacing everybody with machines and AI and robots and so forth. So there won't be eventually any jobs, which means only if you're very creative or you just, like you can program a computer, let's just say. But why isn't everybody able to program computers? Because it's like I said, you actually have to know it. You can't just memorize it. You actually have to know it, right? As a company, when I hire a programmer, I'm not like, I mean, they have to be able to perform. You know what I mean? Like if they can't do the thing I want, like they're gone. So, but that requires a higher level of vocabulary. So, and it's not like, oh, okay, well, these people who could barely pass their algebra class, oh, we'll just give them programming information. Like that's like the fairy tale that people are saying right now. No, it's like your brain architecture to be more optimized, to process information. It's like you need the education system in terms of our brains creates like 1984 Apple computers, right? Whereas to be a computer programmer, you need like a 2020 computer. You know what I mean? You need like that kind of computer with that kind of software, not the 1984 one. You can't just take a 1984 computer and be like, now run Photoshop from just today. It's not going to work. Mm-hmm. That's what is happening in society right now. And so there's not going to be any more work for those 1984 computers. That 1984 computer can go and flip a burger, but that's about it. For a while till the robot does it faster. And right. That's what I'm saying though. Like those jobs are being replaced because you can just get a robot to do it, and the companies are going to do it. And there's something to this whole social distancing thing. I don't want to go into like conspiracy theory and stuff, but like there's at some level, our society right now is being tested by certain people. It's being tested to see what we will accept. And from a certain perspective, it's like, are we accepting that we aren't allowed to go in public anymore? Because at a certain point, it won't be necessary. You see what I mean? It won't be necessary to go out to shops because it'll all be delivered to your door. So are we open to that idea? Are we open to certain things, supply chain disruptions and stuff like that, And, like I've been saying, what happens when people lose their jobs and then there's no more, malls and things like that to shoot up? The only places where there's going to be left is like schools and stuff for crazy people to go attack. And that's what they're going to want to do for maximum impact. So I think people are going to start to realize these things and be like, dude, why the fuck am I putting my kids in school anyways? If there was a way where they could be educated at home. Now, what the average person is going to do is say, well, I can't do that because I have to go to work. Well, let's give them work they can do at home or, from home. You know what I mean? From like, that's your base of operations where you can build an income for yourself, where it starts to take care of you and you're educating other people, you're helping solve the problem and so forth. That's why TechnoTutor is going to be it's going to be like this thing that starts to become seen as like an answer to something. You see what I mean?
And
In a lot of different areas. Huh? What?
With tutors in particular that have been working like on my team, one in particular who you introduced me to, and she already has an effective tutoring practice. She understands the basics of sales. So using TechnoTutor with tutoring, but then also you just get results for the kid. And then the parents are like, wait, can I just get this thing myself? And you're like, yeah. and so it's like this combination of one, being an educator who can help people, but two, being a distributor of a product, AKA a salesperson. So it's just like, it's like this dual.
There's so many dimensions to what we're doing. And so and that's why, for example, the distributors are so important within this. And that's why we'll always honor that point, because if as a company, we just tried to do like brand marketing, it's like, then we have to choose. Are we for parents of 3-year-olds learning to read, or are we for high schoolers? Do you see what I'm saying? Everybody wants to put you in a box, right? There is no box here.
Yeah.
Because what person doesn't need to increase their ability to process information?
Exactly.
But let me ask you a question. What's the market for that from the perspective of what the demand is? I mean, people are not even aware yet that this is an issue.
Well,
because they thinking that, well, when you're 5 to 18, you go to school and that's how you get it.
Yeah.
And then if you're in the business entrepreneur world, you go to seminars and you listen to Grant Cardone and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like everyone thinks that there's already a thing for it, but no one's questioning like, no. How do you actually make yourself smarter? Like if you were a computer, how do you literally upgrade your computer, your OS, so that it can do things it couldn't do before?
Yeah.
And that's the best analogy for it. Like you said with the Matrix, like being able to just download the information. That's how it works. That's how it works when you're born until you're like 7 years old anyways. It can't be based on memorization, or it can't be based on what you already understand, because I have a daughter, she has a certain level of spoken vocabulary. She has a much higher level of what they call what's the word, like auditory vocabulary. I mean, she can understand a lot more words than she can speak. Developmental level right now. So when you say to her, hey, can you get the dog bowls, she'll go and pick up the dog bowls to bring them to you to feed the dogs. Like she understands what you're talking about, right? Even though she can't say that yet. But even before then, when she couldn't even understand those things, she learned how to walk when she was like 1 year old. I didn't tell her how to do that. Like her body downloaded that information from the environment. And no, it doesn't happen naturally. It doesn't happen naturally. It's not like a horse where when they're born, like within 6 minutes or whatever it is, 12 minutes, 30 minutes, they're walking. It's not like that with human beings. They're observing the people around them and so forth. So it's that we're already able to do that. That's why I said we've been brainwashed by the system. We've been taught to focus our learning in a different way. So it's like we've lost access to the way we actually can learn as human beings. Right? It's kind of like a system gets all clogged up and stuff, and then it doesn't run efficiently anymore. Right? So you have to know how to
an old laptop with
go in work that we actually learn. That's what TechnoTutor is about. It's not just something that I feel really excited about and passionate about and everything. It's something that the world 100% absolutely needs. Otherwise, we're all screwed. Like, here's the alternative. I'm just being blunt. The alternative is, like, think about what's the difference between China and the US, right? We value individual freedom. China values the Communist Party being in charge and having total control over society. Now, I know there's elements even in America where there's like, you know, people want to be in political power. They want to control you. And even in America, but there's just this impulse within America to, we got to try to hold on to that individual freedom part. Even if we think the government's trying to take it away, we got to try to hold on to it. So the only way, like I was talking about with Athens, for us to really get to that level where it's total sovereign individuality is when everybody's ability to process information is so high, they literally don't even need to look to an authority. You know, and right now we don't have that level of education needed. In fact, it's dropping.
Yeah.
Right. I think its average IQ is 98 right now. It's projected to go down to 96 within the next 20 years. And that's due to a lot of factors like immigration, where people are coming in very uneducated and we don't have a system to bring them up. You know, and then now we're going to have a situation where there's not even any jobs for those people. So we're really fucking screwed. This is the last place, America especially, where individual freedom is like considered an absolute. You know, and so if we don't raise our population up in terms of education, the only alternative is literally like China is like just coming right over, like, all right, we'll just create a big, you know, we'll put cameras everywhere and make it 5G, facial recognition, everything is under control. I don't want to live in that world. At the same time, I think it'd be really cool to have that kind of technology if everybody was super highly educated. You know what I mean? Like where we can all trust each other, and so we know it's not going to be taken advantage of because it's all open. Like it's all totally open what's being done with that data, for example. You know what I mean? It's not, we know it's not being used for anybody to try to control everybody and all this stuff and keep everybody down, right? So those are the two options that I see. Right now, we're at this like precipice where as a collective, as humanity, we're about to make it, we're making a choice. And we're not yet at that choice point. It's like we're moving towards that choice point of, do we want to just accept that the future is total like dictatorship, or is it going to be individual sovereignty? But it has to be as equals. It has to be as a give as you want to receive. And we've never been educated to do that. It's not going to happen on its own. So right now, the natural course is everything's moving towards communist dictatorship. So the unnatural choice that we have to make is to know we're going to have to educate each other and ourselves to a point where we can handle, like literally nobody can take advantage of anyone else because nobody's smarter than anybody else. Not because everyone's dumb, but because everyone's at the highest level of capability, you know? And while we're in that transition period, those who are raising their ability to process are going to have to not take advantage and apply themselves in a way where they create the systems so that they raise everybody up together as well. That's why what we're doing with TechnoTutors is so important. That's why we're looking for those people, like you were saying before, those high-powered salespeople who are like, all right, I'm done selling bullshit. Like, I'm really good at selling. I know how to explain something. I know how to get people excited. I'll be able to get people to make decisions. But I want to do something that matters, that actually makes a difference. That's what this is, right? And that's why we put so many videos of my kids. I mean, I don't have to expose my life and my family the way that we do, but I'm doing it because I want people to see like it's the real deal. Like there's no other education, anything kind of company on the planet where they're like, hey, we're the people in charge and here's our actual kids, products of it. And you never seen anything like this. And it's not like a quick little video cut thing where you kind of make it look, it's like, I'll put a 30-minute video of me just interacting with my son. So you can be like, and it's live. You know what I mean? Like if he was going to throw a tantrum, I'm kind of risking it because I know what's going to happen. Do you see what I mean? So we're willing to put ourselves out there because it's that important. And if it was just up to me to explain it to everybody, it would never work. That's why we're looking for people who it's like, okay, you see what we're doing? Okay, let me explain everything I know to you so then you can go and you can talk to people too. And you don't actually have to know that much because as you're realizing, you can get the basics and then start moving and making money and helping people. And then also realize things along the way. You know, like what you're realizing about vocabulary. You're like, oh yeah, I realize I have to explain it in a way. But already helping a lot of people while you're kind of getting your own understanding of it. Because since you're using TechnoTutor, you're increasing your ability to process. So you're seeing things. So you're literally becoming a product of the very thing itself as well. You know, which happens in stages and it grows over time. Right. So it's really cool because I don't have any fear about where we're at in this world, you know, because it's up to us. There is no anything trying to do anything to us. It's all us as humanity. And a very few people with a purpose can do a lot, because most people don't want to take any responsibility at this point. So it's kind of like wide open, you know? And even the elite, they put so much faith in the systems that have been running things that they're kind of like, oh, fuck, what do we do here? Nothing's working like we thought it was supposed to work. So it's everything's kind of open right now for people who really have a purpose and have a real solution to go and get people to realize, like, you don't trust any of the system anyways. So now take matters into your own hands, right? But you still have to be systematic about it. It's just you're making the system work for you instead of you working for the system. You know what I mean? So that's where we're at.
And that's what I love so. Yeah, I've loved that so much about TechnoTutor is that, one, it's self-education. So I don't need to depend on, oh, I need to call Cameron on the phone, or I need to call someone else and depend on them. It's like, no, I just teach myself, I coach myself. I'm honest with myself, right? I'm the only one who can read my own mind.
Right. It's you understand the principles, and then you apply yourselves within these systems, which are these tools. Right? It's not like I'm telling you what to think or believe or anything. It's like, here's the principles from which I'm operating. Look at it for yourself. Take those principles and then plug yourself into the systems.
Yeah. And then just with how rapid it is too. It's like I was the kind of guy I'd read 50, 60 books a year and not really comprehend. I try and read books on accounting and, balance sheets and cash flow and all that stuff. And like, I could just tell, I was like, it's just not registering. I still hate doing my accounting. So I just used TechnoTutor and I just threw in some phrases like, I see how accounting is valuable. Accounting can actually be fun, right? And just little phrases like that. And in 24 hours later, I'll be sitting down. I'm like, you know what? Let me just knock out the accounting. Start typing it in. And that phrase will just flash in my mind. I'm like, oh my God, that is cool.
Yeah.
I did not need to do a 90-day course or whatever. It was 24 hours.
So you have both, right? And that's what's important for people to realize, because sometimes it's not an issue with you, but sometimes people, they hear the point about, I put in a phrase and suddenly I knew how to do something. It's not the phrase that's teaching you how to do something. It's removing their emotional resistance to accessing the other information that you've also programmed yourself with.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So sometimes people get focused more on that. Not always, but in some cases, they get more focused on that, not realizing, oh, I need to rebuild my entire understanding of things also. Because you can't, but you can do that and then also still have emotional resistance because of a lot of other reasons. So that's what's so cool about what we're doing is, and I saw it for myself, right? Which is I can increase my understanding of things, but I can also reduce my emotional resistance to things that is based on just memories of the past that I just accepted without realizing it. And so that's why that aspect of things really helps in the arena of parenting, because you can start going through, and it's like the person who created TechnoTutor, the actual technology, said it's like digitized self-forgiveness. You're removing things that shouldn't be there. It's like the delete button, right? So if you have so it's cool because it combines so many different fields. Like you have more of like the new age sort of success, positive mindset kind of field where it's all like about your belief system. Yeah, but it's all about your beliefs, right? And so we're working with that too. But you can't only work on your beliefs. Like you can't believe your way to making $1 million if you're fucking incompetent. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but you can also be highly competent and not believe in yourself. You see what I'm saying? Like, and that's what I see. There's a lot of people out there that know how to make money, but don't know how to hold it because there's other emotional things going on. So this is like, that's why I said before, it's like a holistic point. And it's not just, it's so hard to put it into a box, right? You know, it's so hard to put it into a box because, you know, like this statement, I actually don't know what the statement is, but you know, it's like this idea that you shouldn't bring your personal life into work, right? Or you shouldn't bring your personal life into business. You know what I mean? You have to separate personal and business and stuff. But that's not real. You know, I mean, go read freaking Steve Jobs' biography. His business was his personal life writ large. You know what I mean? Like he was bringing himself. That's what made him so effective, was because he was like a monster. You know what I mean? Like he took all that and just used it to manipulate people, right? So the idea that you can separate the two, right? That I can be really good at making money, but you know, be totally emotionally unstable. It's like, it's gonna eventually collapse. And the only way that you can do the one without the other is if you have systems in place that really abuse people and that make it so that you never feel the effect of it. But like we're seeing right now in the world, those systems are collapsing too, because they're not real. They're just based on everybody kind of believing in the system to a certain degree. Right? So we're in for sort of a shock. And it's pretty cool too, because I've talked to several people now who've been using TechnoTutor and processing like their vocabulary around the virus pandemic. And they're talking about how, from their perspective, they're like, I totally changed the way I'm looking at it and the way I'm responding to it and feeling about it and everything. Now, that doesn't mean you become stupid. You don't start go outside like licking flagpoles or the grocery carts and stuff. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to be stupid, but do you need to be sitting in your home like, you know, like, oh, the world's like, that's not good either. That's actually just going to lower your immune system if you just go into fear. So imagine just being like, I understand what's happening, but I'm going to have common sense and I'm fine. I don't have any fear about it. You know, there's a difference between being stupid and not having fear, you know? And so what I've seen for myself and other people I've talked to, they're like, yeah, I don't have the same level of fear, but now I'm understanding what's going on. And those are the people who in a time of crisis are of value to other people and are also to take that crisis and turn it into an opportunity. It's just, from my perspective, I want to create an opportunity out of this crisis that not just only makes me rich at the expense of other people, like people hoarding toilet paper and hand sanitizer. Like, you know, it's funny how people will judge those people and be like, oh, what an asshole. It's like, dude, have you ever heard of like the oil monopolies or like the fucking like water monopolies or like, you know, it's like, this stuff is going on all the time, you know? And now finally though, people are starting to kind of wake up to it a little bit. Of course, I'm not going to put any hope on it like, oh, this is the event that changes everything. No, the event itself is not going to change anything. It's only opening people's eyes to something. People still need to be directed from the perspective of given context and understanding. Because there's a lot of people out there right now that are like, this is the mass arrest event where all the elite are being arrested and it's changing the system. I'm like, yeah, okay. I mean, if you want to believe that, maybe that's what's happening, but where is your self-responsibility within it? That's the real question, you know? And I think a lot of those, and that's why sometimes I'd say the word conspiracy theory. I'm not saying there aren't conspiracies, but what I'm saying is that when people get obsessed and focused on conspiracy theories, it's always from the perspective of, it's like they're watching a movie and they're not taking any responsibility. And they think that their responsibility is just to tell everybody about the conspiracy. It's like, maybe there is a conspiracy, but you telling everybody about it isn't going to change anything. Because either people are going to react in fear, think you're a weirdo, or they're going to agree with you. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't raise their level of competence to deal with the situation because it's everybody's incompetence collectively that's allowing these conspiracies to exist. You know, because again, a politician can't manipulate somebody with flowery language or fear language or whatever if that person has an effective vocabulary, because they just won't respond in the way that the politician wants them to. So it literally, the vocabulary point is a solution to everything in every area of life across the board. And if it doesn't happen, then the reality is we're just going to keep going more and more and more towards like a collective acceptance of authority, because we'll be so afraid that we'll be like, please, we need our communist dictator overlords to you know, protect us from each other. You see? That's really the only other option. I mean, it's just obvious. So things are becoming so extreme, it's going to either go one way or the other. And I'm going to do everything in my ability while I'm here on this planet to move things towards people taking more responsibility and our world becoming where we have actual real freedom and we understand how to use it in a way where we don't harm ourselves and other people, you know, because that would be my definition of heaven on earth, you know? So. Yeah,
I see it a lot like a human body. It's like a pretty cool analogy of like, this group is like the heart. This group is the liver. This is the veins and the blood all flowing in the brain. Yeah. And it's like, God,
you've read this book, man.
Oh, dude, I'm
telling you, like,
I have it coming in the mail.
Video, I'm like, you read that book already? You'll get a chance, though. I know. It's just funny. Yeah. You're absolutely right. Also, like the Soul of Money series. Have you listened to that?
Yeah, I'm working my way through that.
Very similar point, right? Because if we don't distribute blood to each organ effectively, if your heart shuts down, your whole body's fucked. So your body knows that everything should get things. I mean, obviously, you know, we can have things suppressed and damaged and so forth, But generally speaking, the body wants to give to all parts equally.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not treating ourselves collectively as humanity like that, you know?
Yeah, not yet. But that's why we do what we do every single day. So
exactly.
Yeah. Well, awesome, man. This was a really great conversation. I know there's much more to come, but this really is the red pill. And for those that are ready to take it, just reach out. It's here. It's not some mystical thing that's coming down the road. And oh, if Jeff Bezos does this one thing, and oh, maybe we'll get it. It's like it's here. It's been here for a while. We're just speaking out more.
You can take responsibility. You can increase your ability to take more responsibility and so forth in every area. And it is a process. There is no quick fix. The red pill takes time to dissolve, but in part, it's like a realization of, oh, this is something I can do. But then it's the process of actually doing it also. That's important. So, you know, a lot of times people get hyped up on some idea that they're going to get a result where everything's going to change. And the thing is, you've seen that happen for people where it's like you get some results very quickly. But there's also the process of certain things take time to change as well, because there's a lot of habit and a lot of complex self-delusion and denial that has gone into creating a belief or a pattern or something the way it is. So that takes care of the fear of people who are like, wow, it seems like a lot. I don't know if it's possible to change. Some things take a little bit of time, right? But everything happens in the right timing if you start applying yourself. So it's like the results that you're going to get when you start walking these processes is what's relevant in your life right now. Because as you walk through those points, you prepare yourself to be able to handle things down the road. It's like if somebody gave you $1 billion company right now, the average person could not handle it. It would all go to shit. You need to prepare yourself. You need to walk a process of increasing your responsibility, proving to yourself that you can handle higher levels of responsibility. That's self-trust. So it starts with the basic points, which is how can I reestablish even a small point of self-trust, which is my ability to learn new information and absorb it and apply it. So that's what we're here to start with. And then over time, you go further and further and further. So it is a fun process, as you're seeing. I love watching everything you're doing and everybody else that's involved, like every person.
Dude, I have so much fun every day. And
also like what you're doing with self-perfected, all the points. Go ahead. What did you say?
Yeah, I have so much fun every day. Like I wake up and I mean, obviously there's a pandemonium going on. I'm not like isolating myself from the world, like, oh, everything's perfect. But like, I just know what my role is in this, and it's to keep taking on more responsibility. And so when I see everyone contract, not everyone, but it's a common thing for people to contract and, oh, let it blow over. Okay, 2 weeks, then we can go outside. It's like, okay, you choose. But I wake up and I'm just so grateful to be alive and have these opportunities to be connected with people like yourself and Avery and Kian and so on and so forth. It's really a special time, and it's just fun.
I guess as a final point from me anyways, I think there are a lot of people, I'm assuming, that just see this as a thing that's happening right now, and then it'll be gone, and then we'll get back to life as normal. I'm sure there are many people like that. But I'm also sure that there are people out there who are like, something is changing. This is an opportunity. So that's the people that we want to talk to, because those are the people who are like ready to hear what we're talking about, because you can help everybody else. You can do something with your life that matters, makes a difference, feel really fucking good about it, make a lot of money. I mean, literally everything that you possibly could want. All those things they're trying to sell you on when you watch these videos with, here in my garage and all that kind of shit. It's really that, but making a real difference. That's where the real enjoyment comes from, because you get to release all your guilt that you might have. Because the reality is the system we live in is fucked and it takes advantage of people. And so it's difficult for people who weren't programmed to be totally ruthless to make a lot of money in this system, because there's always that point of feeling like you're doing something wrong. This is an opportunity to do what's best for everybody in the system, be equal to the system, and change it so that it doesn't take advantage of people anymore. And that is going to take time, but it's time for those people who are like, no, I see some potential within myself and within this point. This is your time to act, because you don't know when that next time is going to be. It might be too late, because you don't know when the next pandemic is going to happen or what the fuck is going to happen. We can't predict any of that. So we just act when we see the point, and then we keep going. that's really all it comes down to, right? So we're looking for those people who see that there's some potential for themselves to make a difference, and that, no good crisis should go to waste, as they say, right? Mm-hmm. But that means it's an opportunity for people to like wake up a little bit, right? So rather than only looking at the negatives, you have to see what is the opportunity, because that's when the real point of change can come in, and you can really do something that matters. So that's what we want to talk to, those people.
Yep. Couldn't have said it better myself. So thanks, Cam. I know you got a family to get back to, hang out with, and I got a few other phone calls to jump on. So
cool.
Thanks. This is the Red Pill. It's here, and we're looking forward to talking with everyone who reaches out.
All right. See you later, man. Talk soon.
Bye.